just bite naturally. Yes, we're in for some good fishing in Canada.
It brings me back to my youth. All that skipping, it brings me back to my youth, man. Those records I had were all scratched up too. How you doing, everybody?
Listen to all that crazy music, your Pink Floyd music and crazy stuff.
Oh, there was crazy stuff going on back then. I don't know. I'm talking about it. Well, welcome to our Friday webcast, everybody.
Friday edition. I like that.
Right? Yeah, Friday edition. Fridays feel good for some reason, even though we're not working, even though everybody's at home. Friday is still Friday.
What do you mean we're not? We're not working. You said we are working.
You know what I mean. We're going to be working starting Monday. I'll tell you that right now. Obviously, Monday everybody is back at Pine Post, which will be really nice. I know, talking to some of the crew, they're very eager to get back, man. It's been a long couple of
months. Working from home is pretty bizarre because I was doing it for a while there, and I did it for like a month and a bit, and the first week I couldn't even get used to it. The first week it was like I thought that'd be the dream job. If you could work from your house, it would be so awesome. It'd be relaxing. It'd be the best of all. But I'll tell you what, it is weird. It is not. It's not the party time that you think it's going to be. That's for sure. So
bizarre. And it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be weird for us next week. When we all get together here for the first time.
Well, we stay apart too. We got to put our hula hoops on there around our bodies and not touch hoops with everybody. You know what I mean? So you got to. Be weird that way, but luckily we have our own offices, so we should be good.
So anyway, so here's what the deal is today, guys. We have moved our scheduled guests for today to next week. So the mystery guest that we were going to have today has been moved to next week because there was a huge story that broke earlier on in the week, a couple of days ago, actually late on Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
That we thought was significant enough that we wanted to reschedule the guests so that we had a special guest come in to talk about this event. Now, if you haven't seen the press release that we put on fishingcanada.com yesterday about it, I'll just quickly read you some of the highlights. The headline is Mercury Marine enters into supply agreement with BRP and will immediately become outboard engine of choice for Lumacraft, Manitou, and Telwater brands. Now, the significance there is that BRP owns Evinrude. Right. And suffice to say that the Mercury and Evinrude brands have been battling it out for, I think, 73 years. Or something close to that. Since the mid-1930s, they have been the two dominant players in the outboard motor game, and they have been duking it out. And now, all of a sudden, a press release is put out Wednesday saying, hey, the battle's over. Mercury's going to, kind of take over things for Evinrude and put Merc motors on the back of all those Evinrude boats. So we thought...
and that's what they're saying. We will discontinue production of the Evinrude E-Tech and the E-Tech G2 outboard engines. So those are those big, crazy colored ones you see in the back of the big boats and that. I don't know about everything else. Maybe Adrian knows about everything else we'll get them on. But that's coming right from BRP right there, that discontinue.
So we thought we'd go right to the horse's mouth and bring on a director from Mercury Marine, no stranger to our radio program and TV. Adrian Rushforth joins us now. Adrian, how are you?
Looking good. I haven't seen you in a while.
Hey, you've got the best pandemic hair of all of us right there. Now I see why you do it.
Exactly. I can do it myself. Don't have to worry about going anywhere. And I can never screw it up.
Perfect.
Hey, listen, first of all, thanks for squeezing us in. I know it was last minute. I got a hold of you last night and asked you to do this. And so we appreciate you making the time, first of all, and appreciate you coming on unscripted and unprepared. But we thought this was significant enough, Adrian, that we wanted to deal with it right away. Because it to me, being a Merc guy for almost 40 years, like it's shocking. It's shocking. So I want to know what's going on. Yeah. Tell us what you know about this situation now between Mercury and BRP, and more importantly, Evinrude.
Right. So I will be honest that I was not in the know on this one. This one was kept very low key through the organization. So I was as surprised when this announcement came out as you were. The director of public relations gave me about a minute and a half heads up. He said, "I'm about to send out a press release that's going to blow your mind. Get in front of your computer." And so I did that, and I was just as shocked as you guys were when I saw it, and pleasantly surprised. So, yeah, as you guys read, the announcement was that effective immediately, BRP has decided to discontinue production of their E-Tech engines. So that's the original E-Tech plus also the G2 engine. Both of those have been discontinued. And in the last couple of years, they've focused on a marine strategy where they went out and bought a couple of boat companies. They bought Alumacraft, was one of them, as well as Manitou Pontoons. And they also formed a partnership. I'm not sure if it's a full purchase, but they have an agreement with Telwater Boats, which is a huge brand over in Australia. Were the three main brands. And so the announcement was when they decided to discontinue the production of their engines. Now they've chosen Mercury to be their supplier of choice for specifically the Alumacraft boats and the Manitou Pontoons. And then it's an exclusive agreement with Telwater over in Australia. So to provide all of their boats. So as of June the 4th, that's when the agreement is set to take place. And they will be putting out new announcements and information to all their Alumacraft dealers and their Manitou dealers about how to place orders for the product. But Mercury will be their preferred engine moving forward from here on out. So we're thrilled to be working with them and have them as a partner.
Was there any indication as to why they chose Mercury, Adrian? Because, I mean, there are other companies out there, but like the rest of them, you guys are head to head every other year sort of thing. And now all of a sudden, boom, let's team up with Merc. Was there anything that said that?
There was. When they put out their announcement, they listed three kind of factors. I'll see if I can remember what they were. One of them was just Mercury is the market leader, and so they wanted to be associated with us. It was the strength of product offering that we have. And also the third one is we are a global organization. We sell engines, parts, service, all of that all over the world. So those are, I think, the three key reasons that they selected Mercury. Okay. We have done some work with them in the past, so there was a familiarity between the two organizations. As much as we compete in the marketplace, we've always had a great respect for them. And then for us, our management teams get along very well. They work on a number of industry associations and have helped drive the industry forward overall. So it was a good conversation, is my understanding.
Would it be okay if we started kind of speculating a little bit? I mean, nobody knows anything, right? Other than what we've read in the press release. And the press release itself is pretty vague because they're just saying that, the way I read it anyways, it's just kind of a temporary little blip in the system. And our good friends at Mercury are going to, help us out and be the kind partners and put engines on the back of our boats. But other than that, it doesn't say anything. And so there's lots of room for speculation. We know it's not a big secret that there have been problems with that E-Tech for the last couple of years. I'm talking the big B6s. Great motors. They look fantastic. They run, really, really, but they haven't been standing up very well. I'm not, speaking out of school. It's not a trade secret. Can we speculate that maybe they just found that they need to go back to the drawing board and redesign that engine because it was not reliable at all? It's fast. It looks great, but you can't count on it. Is that a possibility, you think?
According to their announcements, and again, I have not been sitting at the boardroom table on this one to know all the ins and outs, but no, their comment was that one of the reasons was COVID. COVID has had a big effect on their company, and they stated that in their release that they put out yesterday. They released their earnings and everything else, so that was out there. They also they stated that they want to focus on the marine side. They're not moving away from their marine products, but they see the future as being with the boat side and offering it as a package deal. And so they obviously saw that was the way for them to move forward right now, was that if to focus on the boat and the boat experience overall. So,
I got one here, Ange. It says, our outboard engines business has been greatly impacted by COVID-19, obliging us to discontinue production of outboard motors immediately. This business segment has already been facing some challenges, and the impact from the current context has forced our hand, says Jose Beaujolais, president and CEO of BRP. We will concentrate our efforts. What's that?
some nice French there. Hold on.
So we will concentrate our efforts on new and innovative technologies and on the development for our boat companies, where we continue to see a lot of potential to transform on-water experience for consumers. So that's what I got written here from somewhere from here.
By the way, just as a FYI, that E-Tech technology was not proprietary to the Evinrude outboard motor product. It was brought in by BRP with their, I believe it's the Sea-Doo line of their business. So the whole thing is kind of confusing to me. I just, first of all, I was shocked, just like everybody else was, but I'm very confused. I'm curious to see what happens. Listen, Adrian, I told you on the radio show when we first announced that whole new platform that you guys had put out a couple of years, we'll call it 2 years ago now, and you started putting out that new Merc, as I call it. I said to you, I don't know what the competition is going to react like, but if I was the competition, I'd be looking for a bridge to jump off of. And maybe this is the bridge, you know, maybe everybody's looking at it and say, okay, how do we compete? What are we going to do? You know, and I think that's the case, but hey, what do I know?
Right.
Right. A couple of things are going to throw at you.
Developing engine platforms.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Developing engine platforms is a long.
Right.
Yeah. You don't just
developing engine platforms is a long process. In general, from scratch, if you're looking at reinventing a platform, it's a 7-year time frame.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So think of that now. Think of that.
So, yeah. So, and also, if you look at, you got to look down the road as well, right? There's environmental regulations coming into effect, emissions, things like that are scheduled to take place, especially around not only on the marine side, but just in general, two-stroke product overall, right? Two-stroke can be very emission friendly, but there's a lot of them out there in your chainsaws and those type of things that are not so much. And there's a lot of regulation coming. So you have to put those two kind of factors together, and I'm sure they probably did that, looking ahead to say how much effort is required to develop a new type of platform.
Right.
How do we compete with other people that are already in the marine marketplace and things like that? I don't know if that is a factor in them or not, but I'm sure that, you know, those are things that we had to look at as well. We made the decision, like I said, when we introduced that new platform, that was 7 years to bring that up to speed.
Wow.
So to catch up in a marketplace is a challenging thing if you fall too far behind.
So I got a question, Adrian. I don't know if you know this yet or not, but when I'm thinking E-Tech and I'm thinking the E-Tech G2s and I'm thinking all these bigger motors, all the bigger stuff, does Evinrude still put out the smaller tiller motors and the 25s and 99s, et cetera? Do they still do that? And is that going to be affected as well? You know?
Right. My understanding is that, yeah, they were moving out of that completely. So they do smaller engines, but yeah, the bulk of their product is the G2.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
So, interesting. That is absolutely insane. I mean,
for those of you just joining us, in case you're coming in late, Adrian Rushforth is our guest today. He wasn't the scheduled guest, not that he wasn't special enough to be on today, but Adrian was scheduled a little farther down the timeline, and so we switched everything up for the simple reason that this announcement that came out of left field a couple of days ago was just too big not to, and I think it's going to have too much impact on the industry not to address it today. For example, Adrian, you know, you guys went through a period not that long ago where, you know, there was more supply or more demand than supply, and dealers were a little behind in their delivery. In fact, even our good partner Princecraft Marine, or the builds boats, wasn't getting enough Mercury product to put on their boats as they were sending out a dealer. Is this move going to impact you guys at all in terms of supply? I mean, now all of a sudden, out of left field, and I don't even know how big the order is, but I have a feeling it's sizable. Do you foresee it causing some hiccups in the production system for Merck?
No, and I can tell you why. I was just going to point that out as well. It may have been a factor in their decision why they chose Mercury, but you're right. When we introduced our new V6 and our V8 product in particular, the demand for that new product, because it was so advanced and so revolutionary, was far greater than we ever anticipated. We actually, at the time, were producing more engines than we had ever produced before, and we still couldn't keep up with the demand for it. So, as you mentioned, some dealers, some OEMs were appeared to be slow to get engines, but they were getting more than they ever got before. It's just that there was so much more demand for it, we couldn't even keep up with that. So we again planned ahead and quickly brought online the second assembly line, so that we could increase the actual production of engines. So that came online the end of last year was when we had our second full line put in place. So now we are able to not only meet the current demand that we have and what we forecast into the future to meet all those demands, so that everybody is now caught up,
Nice.
But also looking ahead to what has just happened with BRP, we're able to handle their demand as well. So we'll be able to supply them no problem, as well as all of our current customers and dealers and OEM partners. So that isn't an issue as well. So we're in great shape to be able to meet and provide engines for everybody.
I would assume that Australia, you said one of the boat companies was Australia. I would assume that they got a pretty good demand for outboard motors there too. Like we only see our Canadian world here, our lakes and all that. But I got a feeling that it'd be ridiculous down there, the amount of boats and motors they sell out there. Am I correct in assuming that?
It's very comparable to Canada, actually, in terms of number of engines.
So really?
Marketplaces are very similar. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they have freshwater lakes too, right? They have salt water, but they have freshwater lakes as well, I'm assuming, anyways, right?
There are a few, yeah, but the bulk of it is saltwater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, I just want to touch bases with you real quick here. If any of the folks got direct Mercury questions, because Adrian's not going to be able to be with us the whole program, so if anybody has direct Mercury questions or questions about this apparent, I don't even know what to call it. It's not a merger. It's not a buyout. I don't even know what it is, but the press release.
Partnership.
All right, let's do that. Any questions that you have relating to that, put them up on the screen, Mike, as you get them, and we'll be more than happy to handle them. I've got one from last week, and I'm just taking advantage of the fact that you're here. Okay. And I'm going to throw this at you, and I don't even expect you to know the answer to this, but I'll throw it out there anyways. One of our people last week asked a question about a particular button on a Mercury 9.9 that, quite frankly, I'm not familiar with. So he tells us it's Tony Schulist, one of our longtime viewers. Says that he was out at a camp and doing this thing, and then he had a problem with the Merc 9.9, and the camp manager or whatever came over the next morning, and he pushed a button on the side of the motor, and the motor ran fine for the rest of the trip. And he told him that the button was something to do with servicing the motor. And when I read this, I thought, wow, like I've been using Mercury 9.9s all my life. I've never seen that. Have you heard of anything like that?
It is not ringing a bell. My first thought was something around the lanyard switch that attaches onto it, but
he said,
that was right up until you said the service part of it, the service button.
Listen to this. It gets even weirder. He says that the guy told him that this button is used when you're doing maintenance on the motor, and you could put the motor in gear, but the prop won't turn.
Wow.
Does that make sense at all? You put it
a button. I'm not familiar with the button.
I didn't think so.
Did he take the cowl off? Did he say he took the cowl off to hit this button, or was it on the actual?
He says that the camp staff pressed the button on the left side of the motor, and the motor started up right away after that button.
That would have to be a pretty hidden, if it was on there, it would have to be a pretty hidden item to begin with, because you don't want the general public to even know about that button, right? So it would have to be something that be tucked away for a mechanic only. All the new mechanics know, okay, there's our button we have to push in there. It shouldn't be, if it's out there, it should not be accessible by ease anyways, in my
And
opinion.
on the left side of the motor, that's where everything's happening, right? We've always had stuff on the left side of the motor. So that's definitely the business side of the motor, but I don't know what it would be. So Tony, you stumped us. You stumped us.
I do some research on that. I got to find out. I need to know about the button.
I got to find out what the button is too, Adrian. Let us know. All right. Dean Talbot wants to know, is this going to be the end? And I know you and I have talked about this on the radio show before. Is this going to be the end of the two-stroke engine?
Well, but BRP was the last one in North America that was producing a two-stroke engine. Yeah, Mercury has moved away from it. Yamaha had moved away from it. So they were the last ones. That does not mean that there's not still two-stroke engines being produced by ourselves and other engine companies in other places around the world. Right, they're still in use in certain places in Asia, for example. Two-stroke still has a place. But in North America, I would say, they were the last ones. So yes.
Wow.
How do you feel about that?
It's a big one too.
I'll ask both of you. Yeah. I want to talk to both you guys on that. Adrian, first to you. How do you feel about that?
Well, two-stroke technology evolved a lot, right? From your grandfather's old smoke heap, having to pour the oil and gas together, up to the current day two-strokes, even the Optimax that we used to have when it was a two-stroke configuration. It had come a long way. And now that technology's even evolved. Now Opti's obviously moved over to a four-stroke platform. So I'm okay with the evolution, I would say.
As me as well.
You can throw it back at you. There are engines, there are certain aspects of it you still miss, or is it,
Go ahead, Pete.
My only thoughts of it for modern day is that everybody used to say, yeah, they got more pep out of the two strokes and they got this and that out of the two strokes. But honestly, when we're running these four strokes now, the new ones, I mean, I would never be able to tell that difference between that and a two-stroke ever. The sound is great if you want to sound. The pep, the takeoff, the whole shot, the top, everything is comparable in my opinion. So I don't know why you'd even, like Adrian says, why do they even have to produce one anymore where they can get the same performance as they were before? So
well, certainly up until not that long ago, it was also a weight factor, but now that's gone, so there's really no need. And correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, in terms of pricing now, there's really no discernible difference between them anyway. So
no,
what would be
you got the performance, you got the weight, you got the torque to weight ratio, all that is in favor of the four-stroke now. So the evolution has been drastic.
By the way, we may have an answer to our question. Our good friend Steve Niedzwicki just sent me a message.
Look out.
If anybody knows camp engines, it's Steve, right? Steve was the owner of Chaudière Lodge, Adrian, up on the French River, and now he's working. So he says the button you're talking about is for engines that have the forward and reverse on the handle. And that button, if you press that button, it disengages the forward and reverse gears so that you can read it high without rev it high without the engine going in forward or reverse, so that your throttle control button. So I get what he's saying. So that's what it is. Yeah.
So I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking of it as a mounted console type thing. You can do that where you push the button in and it actually doesn't engage the engine, but you can control the throttle. But so, okay.
Appreciate it, Steve.
999. Learn something new.
There you go, Steve Niedzwicki. Here's another four-stroke motor. We're going to ask you about, Adrian. Hang on. Hopefully it comes in my picture spot. Does it come in? Tell me if that came in. Did it?
Yeah.
You guys see it?
There you go. Yeah, baby.
We got that last week. We had a bunch of questions on the new propane motor. What have you got to say about that, guys? Is it going well? Is there a demand for it? What's the deal with it?
There's a demand for it. Right now, it's just limited to the 5 horsepower. We're exploring other horsepower options. So It's not going to be your main motor by any means, unless you're just out in, a canoe, in a small boat, a tin boat. It works really well. And I know we've talked about in the past the ability to take that, go out, catch a bunch of fish, go in, hook up your portable barbecue, and use the same tank of propane to cook yourself a little shore lunch. So there's a huge amount of benefit to that. There's also a lot of benefit to for camping and RVing. We're seeing a lot of people. Obviously, these days, RVing is gaining a lot of traction and popularity. A lot of people are buying our little inflatable boats, and they just stick them in the storage underneath the RVs or in the trailer or in their trunk even. And you can throw in that little 5 horsepower propane with a tank of propane, and then off you go. And you've got it wherever you go when you go camping.
You don't need a 20-pound tank. You don't need a 20-pound tank either. They sell the half size, the 10-pound tanks. They got, there's smaller tanks you can take too if you wanted for a little dinghy boat or an inflatable boat or whatever too. So.
And Pete, how long did that tank last you when you used it?
Well, I fished 2 or 3 days intermittently on that lake, but lots of trolling, lots of running, and I don't even think it dented the gas in it, to be honest, the propane, to be honest with you. The tank was still pretty heavy when we were done after that. So it was days of trolling, and I still had lots in it. So, honestly.
So I can answer that. On average, with a 20-pound tank, wide open throttle, you can run for about 8 or 10 hours. I think it's 10 hours.
Wide open.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So if you do for 2 or 3 days just trolling around.
Yeah.
So to answer Tim's question in terms of efficiency, if we're going to compare a 5-gallon plastic gas container, a traditional 5 horsepower fuel tank that comes with Merc or you buy aftermarket, and you fill it up and you ran full open, are we talking about the same consumption? Would it take one of those tanks 8 hours to empty out? Do you think, Adrian?
That's a good question. My challenge for the weekend. Maybe I need to do that and I can report back. I haven't run a 5 horsepower wide open for that length of time. So
yeah, because listen, if and I don't know what it is, but if it's twice as efficient on a container of fuel, the propane wins hands down. If that's the case, if we're comparing 5 horsepower, 1 tank of fuel, whatever that fuel is. That would be a great advantage for the propane because you can literally take it in for a 2 or 3 day trip and know that you will not run out of fuel. So, and Pete, you're telling me that it ran flawlessly.
Right.
So,
Mine was a prototype too. Mine was not even available to the public yet. It was a prototype, and they let it go. So we got one over here. I got a 17-foot bass boat.
Excuse me for a minute, guys. Talk amongst yourselves.
This is from Chris Bosimer. I've got a 17-foot bass boat with a 10-year-old 50 horsepower 4-stroke Merc, and it pushes me around like a boss. I'm a big guy. Glad to hear Adrian is confident in distribution network can handle this demand. So you probably get I'm sure you get a lot of good comments, Adrian, especially of late of the Mercury products, because we've been running our new motors for I don't know how long, and it's been flawless. Absolutely flawless. We take it in as long as everybody remembers they have to take it in for their maintenance. They have to go a winterizing. They have to get oil changes when it's due. You got to remember that. But other than that, these things are rock solid, right?
They have amazing warranty claims have been very, very low on them, which is outstanding. So hats off to all our production guys and our engineering team. They put a lot of time and effort and testing into these engines to develop them up to the standards that they wanted. And it's showing dividends in the marketplace. But it's always great to hear those stories and people that have had Mercury products for years and have been enjoying them and they've been running flawlessly. So I love hearing those stories.
You see that one, Ange? On the screen?
Interested in how much the new Merc 99 weighs. Being female, it's tough to lug the 4-stroke engines around, although it only goes in for servicing periodically. I guess the question really should be, what does the 4-stroke 99 weigh in comparison to a 2-stroke 99? Do we know that?
We can find that pretty quick. I know I'm just trying to make sure I have the right numbers here. The 99, I think it's either So 97 pounds or 112. It's somewhere in that range. So they did take a lot of weight out of the new versions of it versus the older versions. I think it's pretty comparable now to what the two-stroke used to be traditionally. So,
Listen,
and unfortunately for people like a little guy like myself or whatever, you got to suck it up because four-stroke that's all it's going to be available anyway. So hopefully Mercury and the design teams can innovate it even lighter. But Doc D, you're like me, we're going to struggle to get a big motor like that around. But
let me put it this way. Carrying a 992 stroke in the backwoods, portaging is a big chunk as well. So anytime you're dealing with a 99 and you're backpacking it, wow, it's
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Speaking of 99s, guys, I'm not certain if you're aware of this because it's very new, but we just actually released a new 99 Pro kicker, which is available in the marketplace now. So we used to have just a 15 horsepower Pro kicker.
Oh,
and,
right.
And there was a lot of lakes that had smaller horsepower or smaller boats, so like Don boats and things like that, sailboats that were looking for a Pro kicker type configuration engine, a longer shaft that they could use. So we took the 15 horsepower Pro kicker and did some redesign on it, and now we're offering, as of just in the last couple of weeks, new 99 Pro kicker.
Excellent. So what would a guy need a Pro kicker, Adrian, versus a regular 99? He said the longer shaft. That's one thing for a kicker motor on bigger boats. What else would it be that we needed design?
You got the ability to match that with a bigger engine if you wanted to. We're running side by side, but the big is the shaft length, and they come in different shaft length size. So.
Okay. What Adrian's talking about, Answer's laughing there just before Answer says whatever he's in. For those people that are wondering, like on our Princecraft, for instance, on these bigger boats, these bigger aluminum boats, walleye boats especially, that want to drop a picker motor on, it's a great idea to do it because it just makes a lot of sense. But the shaft can be too short on these motor containers because there's a long transom boat. So a longer shaft is needed for a lot of these. So what are you laughing at there?
That comment, Mike, put that comment back up by Alexander, will you? That was great. Alexander Foster says, when it comes to outboards, my motto is this: if it ain't black, take it back. Mercury motors are the best. I love them. Thanks, Alexander.
That's a good one.
Obviously, all three of us feel the same. Hey, by the way, you haven't even made any mention of my beautiful Mercury shirt I put on just for you.
Just for me? That's fantastic. I thought you wore it every day. That's what I assumed.
Good one, Adrian.
By the way, did I ever get JP? We do a Wednesday broadcast as well, and so he had sent a brand new Princecraft T-shirt that I had on Wednesday during the show, and everybody started making comment about my new Princecraft shirt, and I said, oh yeah, listen, I almost forgot to tell you. Go to princecraft.com, send a message to JP, tell him that you were watching the program today, and that I told you that you could have a free Princecraft shirt. So they all did. It was the best. JP's sending me emails immediately.
Yes, Angelo, you owe me 2-for-1 Fishing Canada shirt for Princecraft shirts. That's it.
We had fun, and a lot of the people who are on today, I see they're dropping messages for us saying, hey, thanks a lot. I got my T-shirts. Poor JP.
We got one from Calvin there. How environmentally efficient are the where'd it go? I just lost it. I'm sure the new Mercs. Where did it go? Mikey, do you have that one? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, they are the lowest emissions available out there. Like I mentioned, there's so much regulation and changes coming. It's something that you constantly need to be striving for. It is such a key part of our function as a company these days. Everything from the way that we produce the engines, on the radio show, we've talked a lot about that. The recycling that we do, the ability to take all of our scrap parts and melt it down because we have our own foundries on site. So from the manufacturing process, from the buildings, from the way that we run our company, we have 4 key areas that we function on, and one of them is sustainability. So that goes right into the product design as well. just doing everything that we can to make these engines as clean and environmentally friendly as possible. So it's a big concern. We obviously conserve our environment that we're enjoying so much while you're out there in your boat. So
Right.
Tell folks how much manufacturing of Merc products is done right here in North America, Adrian?
it's still the bulk of it. All of the design, the engineering, the head office is still in Wisconsin, and all of the engines, 75 horsepower and up, are all produced in Wisconsin and North America. So that's all done on site, as well as most of the components we have different plants around the world that might do assembly, but the actual manufacturing of the components that go into those engines is done in North America as well. So very much a North American company.
Angelo, take a look at that picture. What do you think of that?
Oh my God. Is it here? Is it here?
It's the picture I got that I thought might pique your interest.
Is it here?
It is here.
That's the new 300R, by the way. That
Motor delivered.
you describe that motor, it's stunning. It's stunning.
Yeah.
The only so, talk a little bit about that whole upper end of the platform, Adrian. You know, most people don't realize that, you know, Merc, we all think of Merc as just a great fishing motor, and it's been around since we've been around, and since the beginning of time it's been fishing people. And they don't realize that Merc also has another division, and that's the racing division. And they are to racing, Merc is to racing what Merc is to fishing as well. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Right. Yeah. Mercury Racing is a huge part of our portfolio. So now we're all the way, we've talked about it, we're up to 450 horsepower engines. And those engines are being used in multiple applications on big boats. The demand for big boats and big offshore boats continues to grow. That's a growth area, and it takes a lot of torque and horsepower to get those big heavy boats up. So, for example, Cigarette just came out with it's a 59-foot boat, and it has 6 450s on the back of it. And this thing will take you and 24 of your best friends 80 miles an hour, no problem at all, without missing a beat.
Wow.
It's been on the boat. It's outstanding. But our racing division, just like you see it in cars as well, right? They push the envelope as to what can be achieved, and are constantly innovating and putting that into a really harsh environment when it comes to kind of like Formula One is. You're pushing the boundaries of technology and endurance, and bringing that together, and then being able to take that knowledge and information and then bringing it down to use in other products. So they do fantastic work. We call it up on the hill. They're in the high point of Wisconsin, if you can call it that.
I'm glad you used the F1 analogy, because, as you know, a lot of the McLaren and Ferrari aside, put them aside, but a lot of the other auto brands, they use F1 as their flagship testing grounds, right? And I'm not just talking speed, but all their brake technology, their clutch technology, all of that stuff is developed on F1 tracks. And you guys are no different. I'm glad you brought that up. People don't realize you need that kind of racing heritage and background to produce really good consumer grade engines that will last, and you could beat them up and you can use them hard, because you will never use our engine as hard as a race boat is going to use their Merc. So by having those Merc racing engines out there, it's just great for people like us, because listen, we just turn that key and it runs and it goes, and we know that we're going to come back at the end of the day and do it all over again tomorrow. And that's the beauty of a Merc motor. Just been fantastic.
The company a couple of years ago to put together a presentation looking at kind of the innovation and the advantages of automotive companies that participated in a race program. And so I had the opportunity to spend a couple of glorious days on Google going back in time and looking at old race cars and things like that. But it was amazing the amount of technology that we take for granted now in our everyday cars, seatbelts and indicators and just stuff that you don't even think of.
Yep.
That was all developed for a race application first, before it became commonplace.
Right.
So some of the things that we're working on now when it comes to control, accessibility, the ease of use, you will see in the future. And I'll share with you another story, which was actually pretty amazing. So last year, I had an opportunity to go down to BMW Design Works in California, which is the test center where they do a lot of the design, obviously on BMW, but also in the automotive or airline industry. They do a lot of design work there and helping companies refine technology. And they took me into this little top secret lab that they had where they were looking at different ways of controlling cars in the future. Everything from, and we started to explore this with some of our technology recently when we went to the Consumer Electronics Show, but things like gesture command, the ability for sight, so the ability to use your eyes to look at a gauge or a control and have that as a trigger point in the future of how you would be able to control. For example, if you wanted the volume of your radio to go up or down, you'd be able to look at the radio and blink twice and it would turn it down or move to the next song. You know, they had this whole test lab set up that they took the time to let us explore and sit down at their workstations and touch and feel and look at new ways of interacting. And Mercury has done a lot of that in Brunswick as well, our parent company. We talked a little bit about it on the radio show, but we went to the Consumer Electronics Show, like I mentioned, this year in Las Vegas, which is the mecca of technology across all kinds of different industries. And one of the things that we had on display there was kind of that, what we called the helm of the future. And that was looking at different ways for people to interact with the boats and the control, where you would have some of the technology we have today, like joystick, for example, but also the ability to have voice recognition. So in our simulator, you could actually sit there and talk to the boat, say, you know, Google, start your engines. And you guys may have already had a glimpse of that when you came down to visit us at Lake X. I think we had some technology already on the water there that you saw. But you say, Google, start your engines, and then it starts it up, and the boat says, what would you like to do today? And you say, well, I would like to go to such and such a place. So we're in our simulator, you were going across the lake to visit your friends for dinner. So you told them the name of the restaurant. It automatically brought it up on your screen, set the coordinates, and said, all right, we're ready to launch. Would you like us to steer the boat? Would you like me to steer the boat, or do you want to steer the boat today? And we could say, I'm feeling kind of lazy. Boat, drive yourself. And with the autonomous steering function, it would pull itself away from the dock, set the course, and then ask you, you know, what music would you like? And you'd say, hey, play my Spotify song, and it would put it on the radio for you. It just, the technology, you know, some of that is coming from the automotive world, but a lot of it is being developed by the marine world as well. And when you look at the complexity of controlling a boat, there's a lot more things happening on a boat than there is in a car. So in a lot of marine technology is actually helping now. We were always trying to catch up to automotive, and now we've surpassed it in a lot of ways and are starting to lead in the technology field, which is very exciting to see. So there's a lot of stories there, but there was just amazing where it all starts with kind of racing, and that technology gets brought into the everyday, and now marine is doing the exact same thing. You'll see that transcend industries and things that you use in everyday life will be just like your boat controls.
I had a question, Adrian, that I asked a guy and he couldn't really answer it. And it's going back to the cigarette boats and the saltwater boats. And you're seeing a real trend towards outboards on these boats now that you never saw before. They were inboard outboards or whatever. They're all running either two, 3, 4, whatever. What's the trend to outboards? How do they go to that point where it was inboard, outboard, or whatever it was before, now to outboards? What was the reasoning that they're all using it?
Yeah, there's been a big trend towards outboards. A number of reasons, just technology in outboards has evolved a lot in the last few years. Design of boats, demographics, you know, a lot of people got a little older somewhere, somehow, who knows how that happens, but, you know, they didn't necessarily want to be climbing around in an engine compartment anymore. So design, the fact that outboards got smaller as well in terms of size, opened up a lot of design features for boat manufacturers. They could put swim platforms on the back because they didn't need quite as big an area for the outboards anymore. Right. Horsepower rating, as we mentioned, has been going up. So there's been a whole bunch of factors. Stern drive engines are still available and a great source of power. But yeah, you've seen a lot of new design and new thinking around outboards as the technology's evolved the last few years.
I think it's as simple too as room. Boats, doesn't matter whether you got a 59-foot boat or a 12-foot boat. Still, you're always looking for more room in a boat,
That's
and
right.
and the best way to do that is get rid of that big lump of inboard that's sitting in the back half of the boat and put it out on the back. To me,
Yeah,
it's not right. And we know now that we can get as much, if not more, in a lot of cases, a lot more horsepower to the prop from an outboard versus an inboard. So you got more efficiency, better performance, and you free up all that space. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. But there is
yeah.
something sexy about that big inboard, right?
Sure.
That rumbling of that V8. Although now we've got the same thing with the Merc V8. So
I mean, to me, it's sexier seeing like a stack of 3 Mercs on the back of these, or 5 Mercs on the back. It's like, whoa, what are these guys doing? You know, I get that. I get that part. If you can afford that, why not stack them up, right? So
I agree. I agree.
what else we got?
Any other questions for Mercury, Mike, that you can see on there? Because I know we've got to get Adrian moving. Russ Lamb, what's the difference between a 9.9 and a Pro Kicker?
Yeah, so as we discussed, the big advantage of the Pro Kicker is just the length of shaft. Gets it a little deeper in the water for you. Sailboats obviously have a bigger transom than a lot of fishing boats do, so they require something with a longer shaft to get the propeller down in the water. But the main advantage is, yeah, you're digging deeper into the water, getting clean water, so you get more thrust, more push out of that engine for you. So that's the big advantage, and yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a COVID-related question.
Yes.
You spent the last couple of years traveling around the world setting up shows. How's that? Like, what are you doing that's not going on right now? And when's your next show? When's your next show?
Well, fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you want to look, was we had just literally wrapped up our last kind of what we call consumer show that we participate in corporately. The week before the stay-at-home order came down. So that was great for us. Our summertime schedule of events, obviously there's a lot of fishing tournaments that we participate and sponsor in. They've been greatly affected, but looks like in North America, well, in the US anyway, they're starting to come back online in June. So we'll see how that rolls out across Canada. And we have a lot of boat dealer events and things like that. So we're accommodating that. We're doing a lot of stuff, obviously, like everybody else online, exploring different options there, how that's going to work. And so physical show season really starts up again the end of September. And as of this moment, everybody is saying that that's all on track. And hopefully it is. I know there's being a lot of changes are being made in terms of design of shows to accommodate social distancing and make sure that everybody is. There's a lot of programs have been put in place by the industry to make sure that facilities are constantly cleaned and sanitized, and the touch points are being reduced, which is fantastic. And then also, if you look at the way the booths themselves are being designed, I'm sure you'll see a lot of changes there. I know we're making a lot of changes to the way that we have done shows in the past, the way that we show our products and things, to make sure that people can enjoy the experience and not have to worry about kind of the rules around social distancing and things. So when September rolls around, it'll be interesting to see, but we're planning for it.
That's a great answer to Tim Sturgeon's question, because it is going to be a new world. Let's face it. We're not going back to where we were, even if we wanted to. It's not going to happen. So I think every day, once we get out of jail, I think every day is going to be a new experience for all of us. And Tim's question is bang on. He says that you mentioned the sales and in the market. What do you foresee? What do you foresee as some of the changes that will be brought on by the COVID virus in your industry or in boating in general? Do you see things that right now are going to change forever because of this in the boating industry and in outboard motors?
I guess I'll answer that just in the very short term, because we're still figuring out the longer term view. But what we've seen, especially in the US as states start to reopen, is people embracing boating as a pastime and a lifestyle for a variety of reasons. First off, people are not, plans to go to Europe for their summer vacation have been changed or affected. They are staying closer to home. I think this has really forced us all to focus on, the the people that you're missing in your life, your loved ones, your family. You know, people want to spend time and are refocused on the family, which is fantastic. And a great place to do that is on a boat. Boat, you can put the people that you love and you know and care about on a boat, and it is social distancing to be able to go out in the water and enjoy time together. So what we've seen already in the US is just a huge demand for boats, for recreational products, as things come back online, and people enjoying and spending time together on a boat. So it's really focused in on that, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's going to, it augurs really, really well for the boating industry. I think you're right. I think you're bang on with that assessment. We are going to all of a sudden discover what we've been taking for granted. And
Yes.
we had this little taste of losing it. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to take it for granted anymore. I think boating has become a big part of what we do.
And you know what, Adrian made a great point there in that we're now in the mind frame of we're kind of confined to our areas now, right? Even locally, I don't want to travel really far if I can do my fishing really close. Let's say, the answer might be different because we got to work, we got to cover the province, but why not just fish your own area? So now you're saying, okay, I got to do stuff around here. And I love fishing, I love boating, whatever. I'm going to do that around here versus Adrian said, taking a European vacation. I know I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to get more of this in right here immediately. And one of the things I can do is boat or fish. So it's it might be helping a lot. I know that I've heard in the U.S. that fishing license sales are hugely up, like 40% up from last year.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. You wouldn't think that, right? People at first they were saying, "Can we fish? Can we not go fishing?" and all that. They found that fishing is a great little pastime during COVID, and sales are up. I'm sure that's going to equate to boating or using a boat or whatever too. So, right, fishermen use a boat.
It is. The U.S. just went through. They had Memorial Weekend was last weekend, and the states that have opened up and have allowed people onto their lakes, so the docks are open and the launch ramps are open. They had huge numbers of people heading to the water and enjoying safe, enjoyable time together as a family.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
What did Dean have up there, Mike? Can you put Dean back up again? Dean says, will Mercury be honoring? Oh, here we go. You knew this was going to come soon. Will Mercury be honoring the warranties on Evinrudes?
BRP is still honoring their warranties and doing their service. So BRP dealers are still looking after all of that. Obviously, if you buy a Alumacraft now with a Mercury engine on the back of it, then you'll get the full Mercury warranty with that. But all the existing BRP stuff is still going through BRP dealers, and they're honoring all of their own warranties.
I'm curious, is there a pipeline filled with Evinrude Outboard, the transoms of Alumacraft or the other boat companies, or was this something that's they kind of anticipated, and are we as of this day going to see a Merc motor on the back of some of those boat brands like Alumacraft?
There is obviously some in the pipeline. I don't know how full that pipeline is, but they'll continue to sell those through. They just won't be able to replace them. In the BRP announcement, they specifically stated that they were stopping production effective immediately. So if you have a particular model and you sell it, you will not be able to replace that model. So, but there are some in the pipeline, I'm sure, out there.
Yeah,
People got to remember too that if you had an Evinrude and and you loved your Evinrude and it's getting older and you can't get a new one, that marinas are very well equipped. Mercury dealers are very well equipped to stick a Mercury on the back of your boat. They got to change the controls, they got to change the gauges, etc. But this is what they do. It's it might take a little extra effort, but you're going to get into what we think is the best motor out there. And they can do it for you. So don't fret at something like this if you're a die-hard Evinrude person, because you'll still get by here. So
we'll get to Alexander's question in a minute, but I just had a thought. Anybody who's been sitting on the fence, trying to make a decision now about switching, boy, what a great opportunity now. You don't have to worry about, am I making the right choice? You're going to make the right choice, all right.
Yeah, you're the only choice.
What did Alexander have on there, Mike? You can keep those things up just because we don't answer them right away. Don't take them away on us. Alexander says, I have a 4-stroke 75 It's a good overall. What's a good overall stainless prop and pitch? The age-old question, eh? What prop do I need for my outboard motor? We did a whole piece on it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly throw my 2 cents in, and that is there's so many variables to that question. It's mind-boggling. And I know Adrian's going to back that up. Go ahead.
Yeah. We make 500 different types of propellers, and that's for all different kinds of applications. So Alexander, what I would suggest is you go to mercurymarine.com and go to the prop selector. So the prop selector is a function that we have on there where it asks you 5 or 6 different questions. So, what is the key thing you're trying to do with your boat? Are you looking for optimum hole shot? Are you looking for top end speed? Are you looking for heavy load hauling capabilities? It'll ask you, what type of boat you have, because that obviously affects as well the performance of it. So answer 5 or 6 really quick questions, and then it'll give you a recommendation on the propeller and the pitch that is right for whatever that application it is. Because some people run with an empty boat, and other people just load the living daylights out of it. And, put every piece of gear you've got in there, so that changes the performance.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
So the prop selector, and it'll hopefully help you out. Although you can check with your local dealer for the recommendations, but that at least the prop selector will give you a good place to start.
Yeah, we use that prop selector ourselves when we go on the site. So it means to let everybody know that's how accurate that thing is. Still, there's some variances in little numbers and pitches, but it gets you in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, it'll get you close. You know what I just thought of? Can we not get that prop selector to link up to our site, and then people can just click it and go to the prop selector on Merc? We should do that.
No idea.
It's a fantastic. Yeah. We got to look into that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Christian McCormick, Adrian, I left my brother's 150 Merc outboard on for 30 seconds out of the water as we were pulling it out of the water. Am I in big trouble?
Am I in trouble with your brother?
Your brother in trouble.
Well, can't offer you family advice. I'm not a therapist there, but you have to figure that one out for yourself. But from what I've been told, you should be okay. 30 seconds, if that was the time, it should be okay. I've been told that you can do that. I don't want to admit that I already done that, but yes.
He's pulling the water. So remember that everybody here, that when you're pulling your boat out of the water, there is still some residual water in there that's draining out. So it's not like parting in your driveway for 30 seconds, even though it's not good to do. You should never do that, really. But when you're pulling it out of the water, at least there's still some water in the pumps, and there's still a bit of coolant going through there. So you're not going to kill it. But I'm sure Adrian will tell you, do not run your motor for 30 seconds out of the water if you don't have to. I mean, there's no reason to do it. You put some earmuffs on it, whatever it takes to do it with water and cooling in there. So
sometimes
exactly. But in the water, you're right. There's water still in the system. In 30 seconds, I don't think it would have pumped it all through and got it out. So
right. Another thing I'm going to say another thing.
Ours up just for a second, and I can tell you, there's a lot of anxiety, even for just an on and off. And so 30 seconds, I can see why he's asking that question.
Another thing for everybody else that wants to do, run your motor in your driveway or something like that. Earmuffs, the muffs that they sell make a big difference too. I know, and I learned this from Tony at Extreme, Mercury dealer, and that he had this one set that he had put on. It was just a bizarre looking little set. They were separate, and one had a needle that went right through the lower unit. And I said, Tony, why are you using that? Why not the other? He says, all that other stuff is garbage out there. He says, you won't believe how little water you get in through those $20 muffs that you have in your driveway. Now, apparently, he says you're not going to blow your motor up, but since he's a mechanic, he uses the proper one. There is a proper set. Maybe it's Mercury designed. I don't even know who designs this stuff. It's pretty bizarre because the Nans that had a needle that went right through part of the holes and went through, and then they stuck together like that. And I believe it was only going on one side. I'm not sure, but so you got to be careful with don't buy the cheapest earmuffs you can get too for your motor if you're going to do anything to run it.
Good rule of thumb there. If you've got a good stream of water coming out of your water exhaust, you're good. I mean, as long as you've got water coming out, it means it's going through the motor.
Yeah.
Fine.
And you won't see it. a lot of times you won't see it come out of the little telltale too. You know, when people are looking where the water pees out of your motor, basically. In neutral, at low revs, a lot of times it doesn't come out until you have to rev it up. Then all of a sudden it starts spitting out too. So don't panic if it's not coming out of there.
I'll bet you our new 300R will be spitting it out pretty good.
It's going to spit out something. It's probably going to spit me out of the boat. The damn thing's so bad.
Outdoorsy gal wants to know. She says, not sure. I missed this info earlier. I have a 8999 Evinrude. That's a shame. I'm hoping I can still get parts for it, etc., like impellers. And where in the future will BRP with BRP? Where in the future will I be buying it? I'm going to assume that BRP, being the reputable company that it is going to be maintaining the upkeep of all of these outboard motors that are out on the market. I can't see them turning their back on it. And I'm also not 100% sure, reading the press release the way I read it, that this is a forever thing. I just have this sneaking suspicion this is not a forever thing. I think it's a for now thing, but who knows? But I can't see them turning their back on all those customers they've had for years. Adrian, can you?
I'm not certain where their mind is at, Andrew, at this point. So at the moment, we're just proud to be partners with them and looking after them. But to the previous question, you know, a lot of those older motors, there are dealers that specialize in not only Evinrude parts, but Mercury parts and all those.
Right.
Plenty of parts out there. You just got to find the right dealer. They can help you out with that.
We'll give you one more question before we let you leave, Adrian. Hayden wants to know, do you guys have a small motor that works for kayaks?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, we were talking about the 5 horsepower propane engine. But
the 2.5?
We make more. I was just going to say, we make engines all the way down to 2.5 horsepower. So you can put one of those on a kayak. Sure. No problem at all.
Yeah, I guess you could.
Easy to carry. And
so is a kayak, does it have a transom for? I don't know anything about kayaks, guys. So I'm asking.
Some of them do.
They must be built for some kind of motor. I've seen some electric motors on them. I don't know if there's a transom on it. Then a 2.5 would work fine on it, I would think, right?
The only problem is going to be fuel, right? The only problem is going to be the storage of fuel. How do you carry fuel around in a kayak? Might be a little difficult. So, which brings me to my final question. Where are we in terms of solar?
Solar? Well, solar energy. I think you'll see solar. Again, we may have talked about this. We did a kind of a prototype boat a number of years ago where we had put solar panels on the roof of the boat, as well as the beds at the front actually flipped open and they had solar panels underneath. And you could use that to actually run your electronics and things like that on board. So think of ways before you see solar powered. Again, mainly around the battery technology. We've talked about that, the complexities of batteries, but that is evolving very quickly as well. So that might be something coming soon, but definitely solar powered for running electronics, for accessories, that type of stuff. That is all very doable now. So
we tried that. Remember, Ans, we tried that years ago with those panels when they first came out, but it took so long back in the day. I mean, solar was new, and on a boat was really. I mean, it was for a trickle charge on your battery or your deep cycle batteries for your trolling motor. But I mean, it honestly didn't do anything back in the day on our trolling motor battery. I mean, it wouldn't extend you another 5 minutes if you had to. You know what I mean? So
we've come such a long way.
Yeah, but you have to have a lot of panels, like a fishing, like our boat, like a Princecraft boat or something like that. You'd have to have those panels very strategically placed. And this is just for the electrical and electronics, not even around the boat, like Adrian said. So you'd have to have them like along the gunnel, maybe, and you have to be careful. I don't know how it'd be quite the integration to do, but it'd be nice to have, if we're trickling up, recharging.
It'll definitely come. There's
for sure.
Yeah.
Adrian, we're gonna have to let you go, buddy. I see it's 1:05, so you're going to be late for wherever you're supposed to be.
Well, thank you guys. It's been fun.
We so much appreciate you taking this last minute. Anything we can do for you, you reach out to us, my friend. And you take care, stay safe, and we'll see you as soon as we get out.
And keep us informed, Adrian, on anything new that's happening in this this merge here, whatever. Okay, please keep us informed on it. So
definitely will.
All right, take care. Adrian Rushforth, director with Mercury Marine, and was kind enough to join us here last minute. In fact, I called Adrian at his house last night and asked him if he would come on. The news story was just that big, and there were so many loopholes. There were so many questions in the press release that we just felt compelled to bring somebody on that might have known. And as Adrian told you, he didn't get all the details until about a minute before it went public. So the big story is that that's our headline that we put on fishingcanada.com. Outboard wars over ? These two brands, these two iconic brands, by the way, may I add, Mercury and Evinrude, have been duking it out for the global outboard motor market since 1932. So they've been at it tooth and nail. So to see a press release just come out of nowhere saying, oh, yeah, we're good now. Merc is going to take over all of our boat lines, and they're going to hang those nice black motors on the back of them. Yeah.
Can you imagine Adrian's surprise? He did it just when we did, for like an hour before we did. God, poor guy.
It still blows my mind to think about it, eh? But it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But anyways, I mean, good for Merc. They deserve to be the last man standing, and no disrespect to the Yamahas and the Suzukis and the Hondas and whoever else is out there, but not even close. So with these two iconic brands now, arm wrestling to one, Merc owns the market. Make no mistake about it, for sure. But anyways.
And it was something, man. I've been watching a lot of bass tournaments, let's say, and the U.S. bass tournaments, the FLW, BASS, and MLF. And I'll tell you what, there are a lot of black motors on the back of those boats right now. I mean, and now it's going to even more. You know what I mean? The Evinrude guys because these guys are all current running guys. They're going to take their boat motor, trailer. They're going to sell it at the end of the year. Well, next year, those guys that were Evinrude sponsors, if they're going to get a sponsorship with Mercury, they're going to have to go to somebody else. They're going to probably try to go to Mercury, but there's going to be even more merch on the back of these boats. So, I mean, it's already, a wave of black motors, and now it's going to be like, whoa.
There's going to be one big, nasty one, black one with a little red stripe in it this year on FNC1. Yeah, we're putting on a great big 300R. That's what we're doing. In case you're wondering what we're pussyfooting around telling you, is that FNC1 is going in for a refit next week. And it's going to have 300R in the back. We can hardly wait to tell you about that. Hayden, there's the 300R right there. That baby right there. 300 Racing. We had a question from Hayden on there, or a comment from Hayden I'd like to deal with. There we go. Thanks so much, guys. I've been watching your show since I was knee-high to a molecule on the hind leg of a flea. Wow. And you guys are awesome.
He worked at that. He had to get lower than a grasshopper. Okay, that was awesome.
I love the shows. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. People tell us that quite often. And my simple return to you, because a lot of people ask me in particular, being the oldest member of the Fishing Canada crew now, not by much, but I will admit truth. They keep asking me, when am I going to retire? And my answer is very quick. I answer, when are you going to retire from watching us? You retire from watching us, I'll retire too. If you keep watching the show, I'll keep doing the show. So there's my answer for anybody wondering.
150, buddy. You're going to be Keith Richards on the water.
Well, Mike, you can put up questions now as they pop up. Anything that was not dealt with today with the Merc stuff. We'd be more than happy to answer questions here for a few more minutes, and then we'll let people be on their merry way.
I'm going to put another nice image that we took last year to shoot, just for everybody to see what a Mercury looks like in the beautiful setting sun.
Oh.
Between the goalposts.
I love it.
That was at Ange at Richie's Falls Resort, where I did the brook trout show on the little boat. Well, we also did on their main lake. Steve came up, and this Ricky came up halfway through the day, through the week, and then we did a shoot on their main lake for smallmouth out there. So that it was what a beautiful. We have the most beautiful country
Oh,
Province of Ontario I love because I live here. Okay, I'm going to be biased a little bit, but the country from west to east, Canada is such a rich country in fishing and the outdoors. But let's talk specific to us and all our people watching here to fishing. That it's we are spoiled. We admit it. Ange and I are spoiled because we get to travel a lot. But to anybody else there, you can trailer like that boat right there. We trailered that to the north. You can trailer to the east, to the west, and you should enjoy. Especially with this COVID thing going on right now. You can't go to the U.S., although I hear some people are starting to get in there, even believe it or not. I was talking to Corey Johnston this morning, and he says they're looking like they're opening it up for those guys to go down and fish the U.S. tournaments somehow. I don't know how they're going to do it, but yeah, I don't know how it's said, but they're looking to clear it. So maybe there's special privileges. Maybe I don't know how it works, but anyways, for the Canadians. Don't just stick in your own province. We have so much good fishing in this country. It's ridiculous. So really good.
But having said that, you'd have to go a long way to exhaust all of the fishing opportunities right here at home.
Oh yeah, but how often can people say I caught a 27-pound northern pike in Saskatchewan from Ontario? Not very many people can say that. You know what I mean? You could stay in Ontario and do that, but it's not. I mean, or let's go really weird and opposite and go. I got a 200-pound sturgeon in BC.
I think I'm getting a text message from our good friend Carol Caputo.
What's she saying?
Who's watching?
What's she saying?
Pete, I'll talk to you later.
Carol, I said I was biased to Ontario. Angela and I have to be diplomats here. We have to talk about our entire country because it's called the Fishing Canada television show, right? So
That's right.
Trust me, I have learned to fish, and most of my hours of fishing are in Ontario. There's no doubt about it. I said I was spoiled and privileged that I can get to fly to BC and go sturgeon fishing, and I can go to striper fish on the East Coast as well. So it's it's a kind of a nice little perk to this job, let's just say.
By the way, our good friend Sean Kelly just sent me a message too. It seems that Sean hasn't seen me for a while, perhaps. Maybe because I've been locked up. I don't know. He says I should start using Grecian formula.
That's all he can say. Right? He didn't say, hi, Ange, how are you?
No, he just said maybe some Grecian formula. Typical Sean Kelly message, right?
And he loves it. And he loves the fact that you said that out to the public. So
Neil says that pretty new to fishing, going to take the kids. Yay, Neil. I love it. Take the kids shore fishing this weekend in Lac du Bonnet area of Manitoba. I love that area. Do you have a tackle box nearby to explain choice in lures and how some of the lures work?
Wow. We don't have a tackle box, but if you give I'll search some lures if we have it in our archive. If you start talking about stuff,
why don't you send them? Why don't we just send them to fishingcanada.com and go into the you can select the how-tos.
Yeah.
You can. We've got. I won't say every, but pretty much all of the popular presentations and lures and whatnot right there on fishingcanada.com in the how-to section. You go there and it'll prompt you to tick off some boxes to make some choices as to, location and what are you going to be doing? What are you fishing species and that kind of thing. And then it'll weed it right down to what you should be using. And then you'll have all kinds of, not just a written word, but videos on how to use it. So it's all available at fishingcanada.com.
Yeah, good idea. Good answer, Angelo.
Thank you, Peter. That's why they gave me the big box, buddy.
That's what I feel like I'm on that show. What's that one there where they got to, I don't know. There's a good answer, Ange. Good answer.
I can't remember.
That new host on there, that guy is the funniest dude I've ever seen in my life.
What are your thoughts, Tim Wetzel, what are your thoughts on using inflatable boats versus aluminum boats, 12, 16 foot? Good question.
I'll tell you what, I'm not going to give you I'll let Ange take the answer to that question. I'll give you my past on an inflatable boat. One time in the East Coast, I went out and this sucker had at least it had two great big Mercs on the back of it. And it was it was
the West Coast.
No. This was the East Coast.
Oh, I was with you on the West Coast one.
Right. Well, this one, maybe it was the West Coast. The one where I got the shit kicked out of me. When I was hanging onto the rope on the front. Okay, that was the West Coast. So It was the most scary boat. I said, okay, if anybody wants to sit up in the front, you can go sit up in the front, but she might be a little bit of a crazy ride. And of course, I was a Gomez back. Well, still am a Gomez, but I was a Gomez back then even more. And they got a rope that runs along the gunnel on top of it. And I said, grab that rope, Peter. And I grabbed that rope, and I swear to God, my feet I was running parallel with the water that whole boat ride. It knocked the hell out of me severely.
I thought we were going to lose you.
Oh,
It's pretty scary.
the guys weren't slowing down either. They said, he's gripping the rope good. He's good. Let's go. So, but other than that, go ahead, Iz, if you have any experience with inflatable.
I think there's a place for inflatable boats for sure. One idea that comes to mind, if you're going to be sticking primarily to shallow water, back bays, fairly enclosed areas, I think an inflatable, a 10 or a 12-foot inflatable is ideal, and with an electric motor on it, even better, or a 2.5 up to a 5 max. I think they're great.
Okay. Go ahead.
If I have to make a choice, above that, to go to a big heavy inflatable with a hard floor, versus a comparable 16 to 18 foot boat, I'm probably going to take the boat every time. But for those other conditions, I'll give you an example. Carp fishermen, perfect. Inflatable, absolutely outstanding. They're primarily shallow water anglers. Families with kids, perfect. Inflatable, you can't beat it. But
so why not? I'll be the devil's advocate here. Why not a 12-foot aluminum versus the 12-foot
inflatable?
Yeah, because to me, the obvious choice, the easy choice is a 12-foot aluminum because it fits in the back of the pickup truck. You could put it on a trailer if you wanted. I mean, the inflatable, I guess, by deflating it might be the only advantage. But then you got to inflate it, you got to deflate it again, et cetera, et cetera.
But with the pumps, the electric pumps, 12-volt electric pumps that are out in the market today, piece of cake.
I'm taking the aluminum hands down every time.
Yeah,
Flat bottom or V.
If I'm given the option under those circumstances, and all things being equal, would I rather spend the day in an inflatable, nice wide, flat bottom inflatable boat in shallow water conditions where I'm not chasing bass around the lake trying to find where speed is not an issue. I'd probably take the inflatable, but you know what? Even that, it's one of those. It's a difficult question to answer. The only way that I would say for sure is if I have to carry something into a back lake and I have the opportunity to bring in an inflatable with some kind of inflating device. I would probably go inflatable.
I'm gonna redo that question for you.
Okay.
Dear Angelo, this is from Jean-Philippe Dubois Martin. Which would you prefer, the inflatable or the aluminum? Okay, answer that question now.
Good one. Good question.
Aluminum, hands down, everybody.
You keep it up, JP. I'm going to send more people looking for T-shirts, so don't go there. Doc D says, I have a 7-foot inflatable boat. Nice. It's extremely stable, very stable. But I prefer my 12-foot Princecraft, to your point. More room and also very stable. Yeah. You
know what? But that's good because there's no comparable 7-foot aluminum out there. So that 7-foot inflatable, that's a niche boat. That's something a little different that whatever D needs that for, like Ann says, dropping it into a back pocket bay and that's the only place you're going to fish, whatever. That's something because you don't have a 7-foot aluminum boat. So that's something I guess you could use at certain times. We'll say.
Yeah, good question, though.
Yeah, it is because there's not a lot out there.
Nice accent. There you go, Pete.
Merci beaucoup. L'accent est très bien, oui.
By the way, congratulations to all of you who went to Princecraft and got a T-shirt. That was great. He got back to me like that evening. He sent me a nasty little message. Says, "I owe you one."
You knew, but Ann knew JP was going to do that. JP's a great guy. So Ed knew it was coming. He said, if I'm going to do this, it's coming. I thought you were turning that ringer off last week. You had that bad
I
day?
thought I did too. I can't get the thing to shut down on me.
You need see, Andrew's got a technician for everything that he does, and even his phone. He has to have a technician to turn his phone ringer off. Just let everybody know.
Not that bad. Ken Johnson says 2.5. Is that Mariner I see on the screen? 2.5 Mariner. Wow.
12-foot Kodiak. It's on the main screen now, Andrew. There.
Yeah, 2.5 Mariner. That's very near and dear to my heart because Mariner used to be the sister brand for Mercury. In fact, they were the identical engines, except one went to the right and got painted gray, and one went to the left, got painted black. They were identical. And we were with Mariner for years. I remember the old Gray Ghost, the 200 Gray Ghost.
Oh, yeah. The Gray Ghost, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, 2.5 Mariner, 12-foot Kodiak is my teenage son's favorite boat. After that, what a great boat for a kid, eh? A 12-foot Kodiak with a 2.5 Mariner. I mean, they could just go and have at it with something like that. It's fantastic. And he goes with his friends, and they have a hoot. They're great. And you know what? That's the thing about I don't know whether it's any less or any more stable, but for kids, a rubber dinghy is just the inflatable boat is just like it's almost made for them, you know.
It's almost like a novelty thing, right? Yeah. They can have a novel place to put your butt up on top of the pontoon or whatever you call it, the inflatable part, I guess. I don't know what you call that.
They're also very serious boats, as we know. The Coast Guard uses inflatables. I mean, those are heavy duty 20-foot, 25, 30, 32-foot inflatables. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason why they use them. They could use something else, but there's a reason why they use them. So there's got to be a lot of benefits. I know Mercury has a line of inflatables called Quicksilver.
Yeah.
That they do really well with. So
see them on sailboats a lot, right? The sailors use them a lot to go ship to shore, right? Because it's very easy to carry around for them. It's a very
and they're light, very light.
Yeah.
Do you remember that great big Coast Guard one that we saw?
RCMP.
Where, Northern Ontario somewhere?
No, we saw it right at the Wesleyville, the gas station there. They pulled in. They had 2 or 3 trucks. They were gassing that thing up. We saw one at the Sportsman Show, and then we saw it at the boat show, and then we saw it there at Wesleyville at the
massive one, right? Like 30.
Yeah, great thing. It was huge. God. Yeah, it's a beast. They got the seats are like skidoo seats. They're sitting behind each other.
That's great. I'd like that for us. I got to put you behind me and FNC. I'm going to move that.
Do not go behind him on a boat. Woo!
Hayden says, how often are you going to be doing these live videos? Well, Hayden, we started, when the pandemic started, basically when we all got shut down. And for a while, we did 2 a week. We did Tuesdays and Fridays, and that moved to Wednesdays and Fridays. But as I said at the top of this one, we are open on Monday. Thank God. All the crew will be assembling at Pine Post Productions again on Monday. And we're going to kind of lay out the game plan here moving forward. We have to get to work, man. So I guess I'm telling you all this because moving forward, we don't know how often we're going to be able to do. I'm going to make an assumption that we are going to try and do something once a week, whether we're on the road or whether we're not. We're going to try and sneak in these little sessions at least once a week until we are in full swing again. So, but we'll keep you informed. We'll let you know on the
we're gonna we're gonna try and do it for Fridays anyway. So next week, Friday at noon, we are gonna do one Friday at noon. So far, we got planned that at least. So once the crew's all back, we can fit that one in for sure. After that, we'll just keep everybody posted. You just watch our social sites, go to fishingcanada.com, and all the info will be there for sure. So.
By the way, I just want to remind maybe some of the new folks that are just coming on. We've been talking about small 2.5s and 9.9s and small boats and stuff. If you haven't already done so, I would urge you to go to fishingcanada.com and enter the Mercury 2.5 outboard motor. The sweepstakes is taking this country by storm. Every month, Mercury is giving away a 2.5 ultralight outboard motor, and it's the latest technology in outboards. And the ideal outboard for portaging and putting on small inflatables and that kind of thing. But somebody wins one every month until the month of December. and we're going to be giving one away. We're going to be making a draw the end of the month. So in a couple of days will be the May draw. At the end of every month until the end of December, we're going to be giving one of them away. All you have to do is go to fishingcanada.com. It's totally free to enter. Fill out the information. It's a skill testing question. If you don't know the answer, there's a hint button there that you can push. It'll take you to the answer. So we make it pretty easy, and put ballots in every 24 hours. You qualify for another ballot, and then periodically, what Jordan does, one of our crew members, team members, he puts up an opportunity to get like bonus ballots. Like I think during this webcast, he'll throw something up if he hasn't already that will allow you to qualify for 5 extra bonus ballots for today. So, but you keep doing that, and you keep adding up the ballots in the drum under your name, and then we have a virtual draw, random virtual draw that's made at the end of every month. And people have been winning all across the country. We've given them away everywhere since we started last March. So make sure you get there. Then once you've done that, you're there already. You might as well win a boat, motor, trailer too. What the hell? You know what I'm saying?
Why not, right?
It's not like you're there, right, Pete?
You can have enough boats and motors and trailers. Lots of motors. Have a whole fleet.
Yeah. So the folks at Princecraft are giving away a beautiful 14-foot Yukon. What's the model? Anyways, it's on the site. You can't miss it. With a 20 horsepower Merc EFI 4-stroke engine with a trailer. It's just a turnkey operation. It's very cool. So, all right,
Sweet prize for sure.
And you can enter that one every 24 hours as well. So what I'm saying is, once you're there for the Merc motor, you might as well put a ballot in for the boat motor and trailer. No charge, just a bit of time.
No charge. I love it. I love it. No charge.
Dan wants to know, have you guys ever met or fished with Bill Dance or Jimmy Houston? Yeah. We've had the opportunity. They're very good friends. We've been blessed with the opportunity to know both those gentlemen. We've been admiring them both from afar and close up for about 35, 40 years. So just
have you fished with them? I've never fished with them though. Have you?
I have not. Yes, I have. I'd be lying to you. I haven't fished with them on the same boat, but we've been side by side. I first met Bill when I first met Roland, as a matter of fact.
Right.
It was a Mercury tournament, sort of Mercury Pro Staff tournament.
I remember that.
Right, on Okeechobee.
Right.
And so they invited all of their Mercury team members from all around the world to have this cool little, there was like 250 pros there, all fishing this tournament that Roland was hosting. And that's where I had a chance to meet all 3 of them for the very first time, and our good friend Walt as well. Actually, I fished with Walt that tournament. I drew Walt. So, yeah, just great guys. They're unbelievable guys, and we're going to have them both on this show as we move forward. We just want to take a bit of a break from. We've had 4 consecutive sort of TV media guys for the last month, and today we were going to really shake it up. And I won't tell you who it was because we're going to have them next week, so then it wouldn't be a mystery guest. But today we really had a shakeup. It was not a TV guy or a media guy, but somebody that you definitely want to talk to.
You want to listen to, for sure.
But this Mercury thing came up, so we jumped in instead. But yeah, we're gonna bring people on that we think people that we enjoy being with, and we think that you will enjoy as well. And Jimmy Houston for sure. I can't guarantee we'll get Bill on, but we're going to try. It's not because he won't want to do it, but they've really cut Bill's exposure down in terms of the amount of work that he does. And so his group really tries to protect them and keep him as healthy and strong as possible. He is getting on in age, but still the same character that he saw.
They are the 2 funniest guys. Like, honest to God, what you see is what you get. Bill Dance blooper tapes that everybody knows about. That's Bill Dance. That's his personality. I don't know Bill as well, or Jimmy as well, or Roland as well as Angelo does. But when I did meet them, I was at the ICAST shows and stuff like that. And instantly, Bill Dance instantly comes out with jokes, no matter what. If from an introduction to a who's over there to that guy over there, like, he is just constantly kibitzing around. He's got the best attitude. And then Jimmy, of course, he laughs at everything that Bill says, and then he just works off of it. And then Roland, of course, they're just great guys. They're the old school guys that quite honestly, there's a very few people like that anymore in the modern day. I mean, I'd hate to say that. There are good people out there, but that type of personality, and all the bass pros in the U.S. will tell you that the same thing. These guys are classic. They're class acts, and they're classic, and they're hilarious. They really are.
We'll get the Suncor one here in a minute, but I just wanted to relay. I was hoping Roland would be a little more into it last week when we had him on. When I prompted him to tell the story about him, Jimmy, and Bill on the boat fishing together about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And Roland gets a hook stuck in Bill's head.
You see, the problem with that is Jimmy needs to tell that story, because it was Roland and Bill. And when Jimmy tells that story, what he saw, you will die laughing. I don't care if you heard that story 10 times. When Jimmy used to tell that story, you're going to die, because he's got such a great presentation with that story. We get him on, he has to tell the story, because it's just it's classic for sure.
We'll save it. We'll save it for when we get Jimmy on, for sure.
Yeah.
Suncor. I love the show and have been watching it for years, but I would like to know why I don't see anyone eating bass. It's a great question. What's the reason for that? I live in Alberta and love eating fish.
Well, Ontario.
You start in
Ontario. I've got a Pete Bowman rule out there. It's illegal to eat bass. Okay. You just can't do it. Unfortunately, no, it's not illegal. As a matter of fact, I think you're allowed to keep 6 fish in Ontario, 6 bass of combination, large, small. Bass are a very good eating fish. They really are a good tasting fish, especially out of cold water. The thing with largemouth especially, they do get worms in their skin as the water temperature begins to warm up. They get wormy, and then the smallmouth especially get the little black spot disease, it's a skin disease, and I don't even know I can't remember the name of that.
It's a parasite, Pete. That black spot is a parasite.
Yeah, it's a parasite. So people think that's worms, so that's why they don't eat them or whatever like that. And you know what? If it doesn't look good, why would you kill it and eat it anyways? They don't blame you at all. Bass has really been especially from the U.S., it's been the catch and release fish. So when you look at, if you were talking to an American and they came up to Canada, they'd say, why would you be eating bass when you got walleye and pike? They're such great eating fish. Don't kill your bass. Keep your bass for fun and fighting. And I think that's the attitude with it. I mean, most people want to keep the bass just for fun and fighting and a good population of all-around population in a bunch of lakes. And you know what? We love eating fish too. And we've eaten bass. Ange and I have both eaten bass. But I take it on myself I will release 99.9% of my bass, and I keep a feed of walleye all the time in my house. When I get out this year, finally, and I get some walleye, I'm going to keep some for sure to eat, and some pike too, and perch and crappies. So that's why I just throw my bass back. I don't know. It's something that I do personally. I like to keep that population as high as I can. It doesn't hurt to kill a few small ones. I know I will say that, but it's not what I do.
I'll go one step further and say, not only does it not hurt, but in some cases, in some lakes, I think it would do a lot of good, to be honest with you. However, having said that, people like Pete and I, who, we cut our teeth in fishing on fishing bass tournaments. That was the real big start for us. So we spent all of our lives from our early 20s protecting bass, because we were trying to make a living from fishing tournaments, and we were promoting catch and release before catch and release was even vaguely understood as to why it was important. So after you do that for all those years, and when you put a fish like bass on such a high pedestal as we have, it's really tough, really mentally, it's really tough to kill one. And when something happens, and it happens, in the process of shooting shows, we sometimes, screw up, and sometimes it's not a healthy fish. And sometimes the situation just isn't right. And, we inadvertently do, unfortunately, from time to time, have a fish go down. And if it's a bass, my God, it's like, we're in mourning for a week. It's mentally difficult for us because we spent all of our lives protecting them. Yeah. And so to answer your question, when you've got walleye and crappie and pike so abundantly available that and perch, which in my opinion are better table fare, or at least as good. And to Pete's point about in warmer water conditions, they do tend to get parasites and whatnot. Then why? Having said that, you eat bass, have at it. I'm not suggesting that you should not. It's just we find it mentally challenging to be able to do.
I'll quickly give you a story before we get to that last one, Ange. What Ange said earlier about when one dies. I had one die on me when I was fun fishing last year. I had probably a close to 5-pound smallmouth bass die on me, and I sat there and I worked. And my buddy Joe over there, he knows who he is. He saw me working on this fish for probably 20 minutes to 45 minutes, trying to get it alive, back in the live well, trying to release it. It had some spot. Long story short, the fish perished, and I felt like hell. It really hurt me because whatever happened with the hook, maybe got caught. I can't remember what happened in the situation, but the fish died. So I'm not going to waste it. It's illegal to waste fish, by the way. If you throw that fish away, that's illegal if you ever get caught. So I like eating fish, so I took it home to clean it. And again, it killed me to stick a fillet knife in that fish. But when I got doing it, it was the hardest fillet job I've ever had to do. Physically, like just not even mentally, physically, because the bones were structured different than a walleye. There were hard bones in there. I had to take a serrated blade to get through. And honestly, that fish did not taste near as good as a walleye or a pike or a crappie. It was because this is a 5-pound small, 5-pound smallmouth. It's an old fish. What is that? It's 15 years old, something like that.
For sure.
And so if you're going to keep bass, we always say this about all species. Keep a 2-pounder, a 1.5-pounder, something smaller, because you're not the fillet between a 1.5-pound bass and a 2.5-pound bass is not a whole lot of difference, but the taste could be different. So if you're going to kill these fish, please just keep the smaller ones, because take my word for it, when you cut into a 5-pound smallmouth, you put it on, you're going to think it's the best tasting fish in the world, and you're going to say, yeah, that's not that great.
Why did I do that, right?
Why did I kill it? You know what I mean? So trust on that one.
Mike, put Ron's question on hold for a minute. If I could get you to put up Owen Marr on the screen, because it's a great tie into what we're talking about right now. So Owen Marr from the East says, I do the same with striped bass here on Shubenacadie and Stewiacke rivers here in Nova Scotia. Now, when I go down there and fish for stripers, I like nothing more than to have a feed of them. You see, You see the difference? But I know that Owen and all of his buddies down there, they revere these fish. These fish are they're the same as our smallmouth and largemouth are here to us.
Right.
And Owen is saying, yeah, I could never kill one of those. But you see, the same fish, different mentality, right?
He's the president of the Striped Bass Association. I practice catch and release, but I also try to educate best practices in handling the fish from hook to handling to release, as well as the right gear for the right fish. So that's his money fish, right? That's exactly what Angels did back in the day when we started the tournaments. That's their money fish. So they're going to try as best they can to protect and release these fish. So
Owen is an insane striper bass angler, just insane.
Great species of fish too, and they do taste good too. We're not going to hide the fact that striped bass are a nice tasting fish, because we got to try it with the right out of the rivers the last time we were down there, I think, and it was nice. So very nice.
But we understand and we sympathize with you, Owen. We understand.
Oh yeah, buddy. Eat those salmon, right? Hey, Owen, eat the salmon. Get rid of them.
So put that other question up if you could, Mike. So Ron wants to know any advice on buying secondhand boats.
I thought it said boots at first.
Secondhand boats about the same.
Tough one.
It's a tough one, and I'll tell you what the biggest problem is that when you're buying a boat, secondhand boat, I'm talking about, most of the big problems that you could have, I mean, aside from if it's a boat motor package, right? Aside from the outboard motor, let's just make an assumption that the outboard motor is not an issue. So it's just the boat itself. Unless you have an opportunity to put that boat in the water for a half a day or even a full day, it's really hard to assess how sound that hull is, how sound the transom is. Because the only way you can assess that is to have it in the water for an extended period of time. Now, if you can't do that, if you're buying a boat and for whatever reason you cannot put it in the water to test it, another good way of doing it, especially if it's an open hull boat, is to fill it with water on a trailer for an extended period of time. Because obviously you want to see if there's a leak. And whether it's coming from the inside out or the outside in, a leak is a leak.
That's right.
So sometimes, boats look great and they've got a nice, beautiful, shiny look to them, but they could leak, right? So the obvious,
especially in an aluminum boat. And so all you got to do is when you talk to the guy you're going to buy this boat off, and say, do me a favor before I get there the next day or whatever, I want you to put a foot of water in your boat. He's going to think, are you insane? No, keep the plug in it. I want a foot of water in your boat when I get there. And then when you go there on a nice dry day, because the driveway will be dry, et cetera, then you start looking for little drips from the rivets. And you got little lines of water that are going down. That's when you can tell. And if it's got a rivet problem, stay away. Don't do it. Fiberglass boats might be a little different. Then maybe the pumps are draining out or at the back end. That might not be as critical because you won't see too many leaks in the hull itself. If you see a leak in the hull of a fiberglass, get the hell out of there real quick. But you might see some leak out of the pumps, which can be fixed with new pumps. But that aluminum boat, the biggest thing is leaky rivets, right? And they're tough to fix. So.
And there's yes, you can replace the rivets. Yes, you can patch up the fiberglass. Of course you can. But from my personal experience, not just owning boats, but selling boats as a retailer, you want to start out with a boat that doesn't leak. That's the bottom line, because you never get to the bottom of it. It's I'm not saying that's, I'm sure there's people out there who have had a leak in the boat and they fix it. I buy that 100%. But why do I want to buy a leaky boat? That's the question. Why would I want to buy a leaky boat? So I would do my due diligence and make sure it doesn't leak. Now, if you're buying it from a reputable dealer, then you don't have those issues, because most of those guys will give you that 30-day, 15-day, a couple of days, whatever that time period you want to put the boat in the water for the weekend, and then bring it back on Monday if there's a problem. That's fine. That's cool. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're buying it privately from somebody that you don't know, man, you want to put that thing in the water and test it out. And that's not even talking about the mechanical part, the outboard.
Right. That's right.
Just the boat itself.
Yeah, you can also, if you can take the time and you're kind of handy, and you got to take at least a half an hour for this, you can say, okay, go ahead and do your thing there, pal, as you go and look at the boat. I'm going to run my hand along every rivet in that boat. You can just run your hand along. You won't find all the leaky rivets, but you will find real bad rivets. You can take a look real close. I mean, you got to remember, if you're paying 10 grand or 5 grand or something like that for this boat, it's worth getting underneath the boat for half an hour if he won't fill it with water. If he won't fill it with water for you, you might as well get the hell out of there right now, because there's a reason he's not doing that. You know what I mean? But you can physically go underneath, because we've done that before and actually found, real loose rivets. You can do that. You'll see, oh my God, that thing's
Pete and I, we became a bit of specialists at leaks a couple of years ago.
Boy, we learned the hard way on that sucker, didn't we?
Oh God, I'll tell you that story another time. And it had nothing to do with our Princecraft boat, by the way.
Long story short, I filled our big Princecraft up with water. Says, okay, Ants, come on back. I can't find a leak in this sucker anywhere. And Ants says, there's got to be a leak. I said, I can't, come back here, please. Use your eyeballs, because I'm not seeing something. There's something going on here. I can't. It wasn't the boat. It was the problem with the motor. So anyways, it was crazy.
Hayden wants to know if you guys ever had a big fight while out on the water. Wow. I could make some goofy kind of story, because that's the kind of guy I am, and have a few laughs. Truth of the matter is, I cannot recall in the 30 years that Pete and I have worked together, I cannot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, but I cannot recall you and I having a fight
No, I don't know. Maybe Mike might think of something there. The cameraman was seeing something, but
Mike-
we'll get the odd little argument about something maybe, but it goes very quickly. I mean, we got to work together for the whole day. So we've never had the biggest fight we ever had in the water is with a 1,000-pound tuna. That's our biggest fight. We fought that big guy. Other than that, no, we haven't really.
So the answer to that is unfortunately not. We have nothing to report on that.
Hayden wanted a story about that. I know you wanted a story.
Now, have I ever had a fight with my big brother Reno out in the field? Okay.
How many?
You might want to rewrite that question. Change for Reno.
Do you remember anything in particular? Do you remember anything like a good story worthy? I'm sure they're all story worthy, but you got to remember something.
Oh, we used to have some beauties. Oh my God. I can't talk about any of them because they were all they were events. They weren't arguments or fights. They were events. The only way I can describe them. Because
I can't imagine because you got there's two alpha males on that boat and they both want their own way. I know these two guys. I've known them very well. I know them as well as anybody else. So I can only imagine the private moments that went on in that, and the words that went on in that boat.
I miss them. I miss them, man. I miss them.
Oh, I know you do. You guys are it's for those people watching, you've never seen a relationship like this because it's good cop, bad cop, but it's never the same guy doing it. One guy's the good cop, bad cop, then 10 minutes later, the other guy's the good cop, the other guy's the bad cop. And it's like, oh my God, do they even know who each other is in here? They know their own personalities because it's bizarre. But at the end of the day, they're hugging and kissing and it's okay, see you, brother. Okay, bye-bye, see you. It's unreal.
I miss them. Chris wants to know, what are your thoughts on bleeding a walleye before filleting? And I've heard this before.
I do it. I do it all the time. Yeah. Well, the reason I do it is because not in the lakes up north, but any lakes down here, if you got fish in your live well, you're not allowed to travel with your fish alive. So you got to dump your water out of the live well anyway. So before I dump the live well, I cut them up a little bit, let them bleed out, then pull all the water out of the live well, put it on the trailer and go. So I do that just because why have those fish sitting in a live well with no water on the highway and you got an hour and a half drive home in 80-degree temperature, you know?
Okay, so I can almost understand that logic, but take away the travel aspect and the live well aspect. Now I'll ask you the question again. Do you bleed your walleye before you fillet them?
At a shoreline, like up north or something like that? No, never.
So
no.
that's the point I was trying to make. I've heard of people that do that. I've talked to guides that do that. I've never seen a real solid concrete reason to do it.
There's a couple of things too, a couple of theories there. My theory on this one too is if you're going to bleed your walleye. So my procedure is when I get close to shore, whatever, I have whatever fish in my live well, bonk him on the head to kill him. Because you don't want to cut his throat. I don't feel right by cutting his throat to kill him either. I mean, bonking him on the head is probably bad too, but I bonk him on the head. Then I cut just either that little slit, that thing where the gills meet. You put a knife in either right there or cut across. And both ways, they bleed like crazy and they bleed it quick. I will say, when you get home, when you're doing this travel thing, you start cleaning you're cleaning your fish. There is zero blood in the fillets. It does bleed out all the meat. And there is blood in the meat, honest to God. We all know that when you see blood, not just in the bellies, there's blood in the meat too. There's little lines of blood. It's all gone. However, the other way you can do that is if you fillet your fish, you didn't bleed them out, you just soak that fish in water, those fillets in water, and all the blood goes out anyway. So maybe the blood staying in there might taint it. I don't think it does, honestly. But by soaking your fish in water for half an hour even, all that blood is gone anyway. So there's a couple ways of doing it. So
I want you both to soak your steak next time before you cook it. Make sure the blood's all out of it before you eat it.
We don't eat steaks anymore ever since your heart attack. That's bad stuff. No, you see, that's different, right? You want the blood in there, right? I don't know why. What the deal is.
That's what I'm saying, right? That's what I'm saying.
That's a good point.
It doesn't seem logical for me to even go down that road to bleed.
Well, okay. Then just answer me this. Then I love a bloody steak. Would you like to eat a bloody walleye fillet? Would that sit well in your head when you saw that down there versus a beautiful, clean, cooked fish? And there's one with blood coming out of it when you cut it open versus one that's. Of course. So there you go.
No, but it's different. It's different.
I know it's different. So why not bleed them out? Go ahead and bleed them, bud. Whoever asked that question, I can't remember who asked, but bleed them up. Use my technique. Beat them on the head and beat them. You eat them.
By the way, I think I look very handsome in my new Mercury shirt.
Well, when do you not think you don't look handsome?
With all the lines and everything, I think that looks very cool.
When are you not handsome, in your opinion?
When am I not? I don't know. I don't think I've ever thought I wasn't, maybe. I don't know.
You're pausing. I hope the audience is getting whatever. I can't even imagine the shit that's coming out of you right now. So I hope the audience.
We're going to be getting towards the end of this webcast. What else,
Yeah.
Mike? Anything up there good? Soaking milk. Super Spooker says soak fish. I love this, by the way. I did it. I used to do it religiously, and then I got off it, and I haven't been back on it. But I used to religiously, other than shore lunch, when I was eating fish, I would bring fish home. I would soak it overnight in buttermilk. And it didn't matter whether it was walleye, whether it was, it didn't matter. Especially the trout species and salmon, soaked in buttermilk overnight, or marinated in buttermilk. I guess that would be it is fantastic. And Russell Lamb says that he keeps fillets in a bowl of water in the fridge overnight. Well, I used to do the same thing except in buttermilk. I don't know why buttermilk. Somebody got me turned on to it, but it's fantastic.
See, now that's a great point in the sense of, to me, again, it's getting rid of a lot of the blood, because I'll tell you why. Because when I used to do a lot of duck hunting, I shot diver ducks, and diver ducks, when you get into the golden eye, like whistlers and sometimes buffleheads, and these really late season ducks, they're eating snails, they're eating fish. They get a fishy taste to them. It kind of a fishy taste to them. So I used to always do that. I'd breast them. You only take the breast out of these birds, and you put it in a bowl of water overnight. But in the meantime, I mean, and it bleeds out everything. So what it does, all the blood is going away. So I change that water 4 or 5 times before bed. And then by the morning, you've got these fillets sitting in perfectly clean water, and the fillets are a little bit different. But that's what I used to do to bleed out these duck breasts, and they tasted fantastic after that blood was gone, versus cleaning them instantly and throwing them. Like I used to fry them and clean them and put them on wherever you want to cook them. 100% different by soaking them in the water overnight. So
I don't think you can marinate anything either in water or anything and overnight not have it taste better. I've never heard anybody that hasn't found that marinating the stuff is not. By the way,
so
Outdoorsy Girl agrees that I am a very handsome young man. But unfortunately, I have to question her judgment. I have to question her judgment because she also says, but so is Pete. So if she hadn't put that there, I could have bought into it. You know
what, Outdoorsy Gal, it wouldn't hurt me if you told Angelo he was handsome and you didn't tell me. Daryl Cronzy told me I was handsome. That's all I need right there. So if Daryl Cronzy, well, you said you got all these one-word answers, then you said Pete Bowman, and he said handsome. Don't you remember that?
See, I didn't even.
That's all I need. If Daryl says I'm handsome, I'm good with that.
And no, Tim, we did not get our cookbooks from there.
Oh, good one, Tim. Good one. Tim's been reminding us of that. So,
Mike, can you make a note of that, please? We need to
full of crap. Cronzy's full of crap. I may be handsome, but he still doesn't like me.
That's right. Do the two of you have a good
go-to
knot that you use all the time, or does it depend on the bait, lure, etc., and type of line? Well, obviously, type of line plays a huge role, massive role.
Yeah.
The type of bait, not so much, but certainly type of line. Braid versus fluorocarbon versus mono. But
we do different knots. So that's one thing that Ange and I don't. We do a lot of things the same, but the knots we do differently, and they both work, right? Go ahead, and then you can say your knots, and I'll say mine. It's,
well, for tying two different types of line. Well, even for whatever reason, if I'm downsizing a tippet on a line and I want to go to a smaller leader material, even if it's the same material but smaller diameter, but especially if I'm using two different types of materials, a Bob Foreign knot, it's called. You can look it up. I think we have it on fishingcanada.com somewhere if you go through the search engine. But certainly on the internet, if you go to Bob Foreign, Foran knot, I believe it's the best knot you could possibly ever use to tie two different sized diameter lines, regardless of the composition, and have the smallest profile knot when you're all finished with maximum strength is the bob foreign knot. In terms of tying baits on, usually the only criteria that I use is the amount of time, how lazy I'm feeling. Is it raining? Is it cold? Do I want to expose my hand? There's all that's true.
Will
Sometimes,
Pete tie one on for me?
sometimes I'll cheap out, if it's really cold, or you're right. I might say, Pete, you mind tying that off for me? I'm very busy over here.
That's happened more often than not, too. I'll tell you.
But yeah, so go ahead, buddy.
And I trust Angelo's knots. He used the bob foreign knot. I really do trust that knot. I've tied it quite a few times. It's not my go-to with fluoro to braid or mono to braid, only because I like to use, a lot of times I'll use different diameters and stuff like that. And to me, the easiest one to me, and still easy to tie, is a back-to-back uni, a double uni knot. I like to go a little extra. I do 6 turn each side uni knot. It's a bigger knot than what Ange uses, or a longer knot than what Ange uses. So that's why I did try. Remember, Ange, I was telling you I was going to try and do the FG knot like that. I tried one in my backyard last week. I sat there and I pissed around with that thing for about 10 minutes. And then I finally got one tied and it looked beautiful. I thought, okay, not to me, not to you. To me, it looked beautiful. Okay, it's long, but it's skinny. It's really good. I thought, wow. I just pulled that son bitch out. So I think that knot is good. That was for a 10-pound braid to an 8-pound fluoro leader. So I'm talking about 2 small lines. I know apparently it works really well for a small braid to a bigger leader. So if you were to tie 10 or 12-pound braid or 20-pound braid to a 40-pound fluoro leader, there's a lot of difference in size, then it really works well apparently. But so I go to the double uni, and my go-to on everything so far on a lure is a Palomar knot. I still love the Palomar knot. It's easy, it's quick. I know how to tie it quick. I'm confident with it. I could probably tie it in the dark if I had to. Just be very careful when you're tying it, and it's good. Now you use a couple of different knots Ange does for tying the lure on, and they're all good. I mean, any what do you call it? Any knot that's built its reputation and just been around since we're at forever, or trialing knot or whatever, they're all good. But I just choose a Palomar.
Just be careful when you're tying them. First of all, learn to tie them properly. Every one of these knots that we're talking about are all good if you do it properly. They're terrible if you don't. And just be careful. Learn it properly. Learn it to the point where you can do it in the dark. That's what usually I say to people. Doesn't matter what the knot is. Single knot, a Palomar knot, doesn't matter. Learn it so well that you can do it in the dark. And now your knot is going to be quality every single time. So.
Yeah. Put some pressure on it too when you're tying it. Put some pressure after it's done. Make sure you test it, decently.
Wind is the biggest enemy for me in knots. Wind, especially the bob foreign knot. If you have wind blowing, it is so difficult.
Especially you're a 6-pound kind of guy too. You're running that 6-pound leader on whatever else you're putting it onto. The lighter the line you got, it's like spider web, right? It just flies all over the place. So you're right. Absolutely, you got to consider that too. So, one guy was asking if I was going to bring the mullet back. Well, I haven't got any plans to do it, but
you better do it. You better do it soon. Okay.
The mullet got, I'm going to get my hair cut one way. I think about that the other day. I'm going to get the wife to get the beard trimmer onto my head. The
wife? Did you say the wife?
I'm going to get the wife to take a chop at my head pretty soon. So I don't think the mullet's ever going to come. What's that guy? What's that Tiger show that's out now? What is that called? The Tiger, the guy's in jail now. My God,
Tiger King.
Tiger King. I'm going to get the Tiger King mullet going there. That blonde. I'm going to get a colored blonde like that guy, and I'm going to.
I think you look good in that. I think you look good in that whole outfit that he was.
Carrying the gun on my side might not hurt either when I'm looking like that, because I'm going to need it. So I think it's going to happen.
I love it when you say the wife.
The wife. I know you love it.
It sounds so 60-ish, maybe 70-ish, right?
Well. I know, but I do that a lot of times for you too, buddy. I have to say, because I know you laugh every time you do. I said, And I don't get in trouble for it. The wife doesn't mind me saying it. She just calls me an idiot no matter what I say. She's, as long as I don't bring back the mullet, she's good with whatever I say, I guess.
Stephen wants to know any advice on walleye fishing in the Kawarthas? Preferred lakes, depths, general tips.
Where's my hand? Learn to do that.
We talked about it last week or the week before. No, it was last week. We talked about rip jigging. Lakes like the Kawarthas, Rice Lake comes to mind. Really, with the odd exception, most of the Kawarthas are weed choked from this point right through until the end of August into September. And most of the best fishing, unfortunately, is right in those weeds. And so that's most of the good fishing, meaning most of the fish live in tight to those weeds. On the other side of that coin, most of the anglers will spend all summer avoiding those weeds. So you kind of do the math. So you have most of the anglers saying, "Oh man, fishing's not what it used to be. I was out last month and there's just not." Meanwhile, most of the fish live where most of the anglers are avoiding, and so you don't have the two crossing. Rip jigging is it is the most effective way to catch fish in a weed choked environment. But having said that, it's not the easiest thing to do. So I'll let you take over, Mr. Bowman.
You need to be on those Schwarzenegger to do this. It's before I forget, my next blog that's going out, which the boys have right now, it's already done in my MySpace and it's done. They're going to get it on the site. I've got 5 different types of jigging for walleye, and rip jigging is in that article. So please keep your eye open for that. The 5 tips for jigging tips you should know and use. Rip jigging is one of them. It's a bucktail. Normally you do it with a bucktail jig, 3/8 ounce, quarter ounce, 3/8 ounce. You can go half an ounce too, or not, quarter's too light. 3/8 to half an ounce usually, because you want to get down into these weeds, and usually 8 to 12 feet of water in these Kawartha lakes, anyways. And with a bucktail jig, you got to remember there's no weed guard on a bucktail jig. So you're saying, what are these guys fishing weeds for without a weed guard on their jig? Well, the simple fact is you're ripping that jig so hard through the weed bed that it's freeing itself every time of weeds. So it frees itself of weeds. It might drop back into weeds and pick something up on the bottom, but every pull you do, you're getting it weed free. You're basically ripping the weeds off of it, and that's done just with. You can need at least a medium action spinning rod. Spinning rod is the best. Braided line and a spinning rod is the best, because just the way a rod is set up with the reel underneath, you can get lots of torque when you're ripping up. And we're talking rip jigging. So you're literally ripping that jig. You want to get that jig a foot, 2 feet maybe at most, but at least a foot off the bottom and back into the weed bed, right back to the bottom. So and you're just looking for reaction bites. Like Dan said, these fish, there's so many fish in the weed beds, walleye, but everything else included, are in the weed beds. And that's why they're in the weeds, by the way, because the perch are in the weeds, and because all the microorganisms are attached to the weeds. All the food base and everything's right there. That's why they're in these weed beds, right? And protection, but they have a little place to hide. So that the way to effectively fish that, believe it or not, is a non-weedless lure, ripping it into these things. And you're just looking for a reaction bite. A walleye is a very, very fast and efficient predator. If he wants to eat or she wants to eat, she's going to nail that jig like you won't believe it. You're going to pop, you go, okay, pop. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, you think you have bottom, because it's always on the bottom. It's almost when you,
100%.
Yeah, and you sat and you go, oh my God, I got one on here. The first time you get one on, it's going to blow your mind. The time before that, you're going to curse him and I for telling you about this, because you're going to hate the technique, because you're going to say, there's no way I'm going to catch a fish doing this. But I swear to God, we both swear to God, you get a bucktail jig into the weeds and start ripping it back to the outside edge. You can plant yourself on the outside of the weeds, and then you're going to catch fish. It's crazy.
So I told this story before, and I'll just quickly recap it for those of you who haven't heard it before. The way I discovered it, that rip jigging was an effective tool, was on Lake Scugog, and fishing at the end of Scugog Island. There's still there to this day a wonderful weed line that is a big horseshoe right at the end of Scugog Island that the channel kind of cuts through. And Reno and I one summer had gotten onto this great pattern of trolling for walleye right along that weed edge in the channel. and we were just slaying them. But we had really good stable weather for some time when we discovered them. Well, lo and behold, the weather pattern changed completely. And the next time we went, after 3 or 4 really successful outings there, just trolling and getting tons of fish and big fish, they were gone. And we did the old, well, they were here yesterday, should have been here yesterday thing, right? And Reno inadvertently got his bait about a foot or 2 feet within the weed edge, and he caught a walleye. And that's what we said. Whoa, what's going on here? And we stopped the boat and we looked at it and analyzed it and said, well, maybe they're on just on the inside. Well, we can't fish them trolling. Our repeller baits will get all hung up, right? The old story. I can't fish near weed, get all hung up. And so we started using bucktails. And at that time, we hadn't started developing the rip jigging technique yet. We were drifting over top of those edges, and we were just dropping bucktails in the open, much like we do for largemouth bass or smallmouth bass, Pete. Same idea, right? Except with light line and bucktail jigs, and doing pretty good. And then just we just started getting the feel for it and realized that the only time that these fish were biting is when you get a little hung up on some of the roots of the weeds, and you'd have to kind of rip it out of those weeds. And that's awesome. You go to rip it and drop, and there's a fish on, and that's the thing. And so after a while, we said, "Wow, this is insane!" And it was just boom, boom, everywhere we went from that point on. That's all we did. And walleye they just loved that presentation. But like Pete said, it is a tough way to fish. If you don't get into an area where you've got 10 or 15 or 20 fish all bunched up in a pile of weeds, it can be a lot of ripping before you get fish, right? So physically, mentally, it's a challenge. But wow, is it fun and is it effective?
And big fish too.
And big fish, yeah.
Big Kawartha walleye. Some of your biggest fish will come ripping jigs. Remember, like we said, that medium rod, and you got to use braided line here. This is one of the instances where you got to use. Well, you did.
We didn't have braided line, right?
I know, but you want to make your work less effort, right? Because we said it's a hard. So the stiffer the line, all of a sudden you're ripping through more efficiently. You're not rip really hard like that. You pop real quick, so that you can you use all the tools to better you. And by the way, not all the walleye and the Kawarthas are in the weeds. We're just talking about one specific technique that a lot of the fish are in the weeds. Sometimes they move out to the edge, like Ange and Reno were fishing, on the edge. So you control the weed dive. Sometimes we'll run spinner rigs along the edges. Crankbaits are great in the Kawarthas too. Like a small shad style crankbait, or even like a big. We've used rogues a lot. Back in the day, there's Smithwick rogues, 5-inch, 5.5-inch rogue with a big long bill on it. A chrome bill on it. The bill was chromed and just shiny, just like the rest of the bait. We troll that thing on a decent long line and on the weed edges, or sometimes just in the soft bottoms on the edge, and we catch a lot of walleye. So there are walleye elsewhere in the Kawarthas.
And most of it is weather dependent. And I wrote a blog about it a couple of weeks ago. It's on fishingcanada.com, and it's called
the dreaded cold front.
Fishing the dreaded cold front. And so the difference between those nice, easy fish that Pete just talked about, the ones that I found at the end of Scugog Island on Scugog, those were what we call easy fish. They're really active fish. Obviously, I didn't understand it back then, but I was fishing really active fish during a nice, settled piece of weather, meaning that we'd had nice, stable weather for probably certainly more than a couple of weeks, because we were doing it every night after work for at least a couple of weeks, and they were always easy to catch right in the middle of the channel. We just troll up and down the channel. Every pass we get 2 or 3 fish. And then the weather changed and they disappeared. And so we went from horizontal presentation, which is for those easy fish, those active fish. We inadvertently, by accident, started fishing vertically, which is the presentation Pete just talked about, and that is that rip jigging presentation. Because you're not casting this a million miles away from you, by the way. Let's just get that perfectly straight. Ideally, you're standing on the nose of the boat, you're controlling the drift or with your electric motor just inside the weed edge, and you're just slowly moving the boat because you're just tossing this jig out maybe maximum 10 feet from where you're standing. Like, you don't want to cast this into the weeds and then try and rip it all the way back. You want to keep it fairly close quarters and rip, get it back into you. So we went from horizontal fishing where all the active fish were, and when they disappeared because of the front, all they hadn't gone to the other side of the lake. They just moved a couple of feet from where they were actively feeding before. They moved a couple of feet into the weed bed. And that's where rip jigging is effective. And quite honestly, on lakes like Rice Lake, for example, where their weeds are not just cover for the fish. On Rice Lake, weeds are a way of life for those fish. This is where they eat, they sleep, they play, they do everything the fish do in weeds, because predominantly it is weed choke. Everywhere you go, there's weeds. So these fish have adapted to moving in and out of those heavy cover areas of weeds like on a regular basis. They don't have to wait for a cold front to go in there and feed or hunker down. Even when they're active on a lake like Rice, they're using weeds as a source of food and moving through. So that's why the presentation that Pete just talked about, rip jigging, works in the Kawarthas really well. Now, in some lakes, it might not be as effective. In some lakes, like Pete just said, go for those easy fish, those open water fish, those channel fish, those trolling fish. Those are easy. That's a blast.
I like the easy fish, buddy.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
that article, the proper name is 5 Tips for Fishing the Dreaded Cold Front, and you can find it under My Outdoor Life. Then click on Angelo Viola, or you can go to FNC Listicles, and it'll be in there. So any of those top 5 articles, by the way, just in case anybody's wondering, FNC Listicles has all those articles, so that it's kind of an article with a list, right? So that's why the top 5. FNC, of course, is Fishing Canada. So you click on that, and you can go to you'll see all those top 5s. So there you go.
High oxygen content in weed beds. Calvin said you knew he was going to throw something in there.
Yeah, he's right, though.
He's absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Except for in the fall, Calvin, when these weeds start to die, because then they start taking away oxygen, right, Calvin? Hey, you're onto it. I know you're onto it, buddy. Calvin's a source, man, I'll tell you.
All right, we'll take 2 more questions, and then we're going to cut everybody loose. M. Campbell, for worm harnesses, do you prefer a 1-hook rig or more hooks?
Oh, I prefer a two hook harness, and I'll tell you the main reason for that. Well, I like to get that other hook back a little farther, but a lot of times walleye or even perch or whatever, even worse, will take half your worm. But on a 1-hook harness, most of the time they take almost all of your worm. On a 2-hook harness, a lot of times they leave you at least that much worm on there with that front hook still. So you've got at least some worm if you don't realize it's gone yet. Because a lot of times you're trolling, you just get it out there. You don't want to pull it all the way back in. You know what I mean? So especially when perch are around. So I like the 2-hook because at least there's a piece of worm on that front hook, so that it gives you a chance to catch another fish that you're not trolling with a spinner and no hook or a tiny little 1/16 of an inch of a worm. It has some meat on there anyway. So that's my preference for a 2-hook harness. I don't use a 3-hook harness. I've used 2 or 1, but I use 2. Minnows, 1-hook harness. Worms, I use 2 hooks.
It says checked out the cold front blog and shared it. Excellent. If you remember some of the stuff in that blog, if you keep that with you all summer long, your fishing is going to improve. Because you know why? In this part of the world, we're confronted with a front of some sort almost on a daily basis, whether it's coming, going, or smack dab in the middle of it. We've got such vibrant weather patterns. And I'm sure it has to do with the Great Lakes influence, right? But whatever the reason, our patterns move in and out constantly, which means these fish are doing exactly what I wrote about at any given time. The minute that you put that in your head and you just make those subtle changes, both in the way you're presenting your bait and where you're presenting it, fishing changes completely for you. So just keep that particular article in your mind. All right, last question. Super Spooker. What lures do you catch your biggest walleye on? I caught a 10-pound, 7-ounce. Oh, wow. On a spook at nighttime. Did we not talk about this?
last week or the week before we talked about this. Exactly.
You got to talk about this. Good for you, buddy.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
But I don't have a go-to to catch my biggest walleye. I'll tell you what I've caught my biggest walleye on. My biggest walleye have come out of the Bay of Quinte, obviously. I mean, I fish it quite a bit, and they have all been on deep running long crankbaits. Okay, and usually they're at least a 20-foot deep crankbait. I have got them on 15-footers. Back in the day, we used to run Mann's 15-footer. What is it? Mann's? I can't remember the name of it. They're long. I don't even hardly use them anymore. You can look in the Mann's bait, MANNS. Trolls to I can't even remember. But anyways, 15s and 20s were the ones that we used the most of. And I remember I did use a 30-foot bait one time. It's almost a muskie size, and I got a 13-pound plus fish on that. I'll always remember that fish because I said I'm going to try this giant bait, and I got a 13 plus. But the two bigger fish that I have caught are 14 pluses, and they were on smaller baits. Believe it or not, they were on the 15. I think one was on that, and one was on like a Rapala or a Matsu or something like that. So those long, skinny cranks are good. But my biggest small lake walleye was when Anz and I were up in a Snoggy Lake. I got that one on a plain jig head and a leech, and I threw it up in the shallows, and I got a 10 plus on that. And so I've got a couple of 10s on smaller water on a jig and some kind of live bait. So that's it.
I've got to say drop shot. I have to say drop shotting for walleye outside of an environment like the Bay of Quinte. If we talk about, inland lakes, any inland lake that you can think of, when you have an opportunity to drop a drop shot into really good walleye holding structure, whether it's a point, a hump, a ledge, or whatever, man, I'll tell you, you can't go wrong with that. And drop shotting has to become a part of your toolkit if you're a serious walleye fisherman, for sure.
Well, on all species, really.
Yeah,
We've got smallmouth, we've got largemouth. That show I did on Nipigon River Anz years ago, where I slayed a bunch of big specks, all the drop shotting.
All drops.
Drop shotting.
Yeah.
For big brook trout. Like, it was crazy. So that is they're stretch. These bands are the one I was going back to. The man stretch 20 plus, stretch 15. You can still get them apparently. I'm looking them up right now. So they used to be a really good bait. So, but anyways, drop shotting. Oh my God, multi-species. We've got how many largemouth have we caught drop shotting? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a deadly technique.
And what is it? It's vertical jigging, right?
Pretty
or as vertical as you can get, except you haven't got the gold nugget is not buried inside of whatever it is you're fishing. Rubble, mud, wood, weeds. Your bait is slightly above that. And that's the key to drop shotting is that it's like vertically presenting a bait, but it's not mired inside of the gunk, which a traditional jig head usually is. It's somewhere in the crevices, in the mud, under some wood, around some weeds. A drop shot gives you that same type of exposure, but your bait is above it all the time.
Let me make it real simple. First off, fish will bite lures off the bottom. They certainly will do that. We've done that Hans and I have done that for a combined 100 years, catching them like that. But look at a fish if a fish was lying on the bottom, or let's say 6 inches off the bottom, where's his mouth? It is not on the bottom. He'd have to turn down to be on the bottom. If you're putting that bait right in front of his yapper, which you're doing it with a drop shot, the weight's on the bottom, that lure is right in front of his yapper. I'll tell you what, it can be pretty deadly. Now you're teasing him. Now you're putting that meal right in his wheelhouse, and you're saying, even if you're not hungry, pal, you might want to just take a test of this little thing because it looks pretty damn good. So it's effective in a very different way, but but don't neglect fishing the bottom either, right? With walleye fishing especially, because look at a jigging lure, like an ice fishing lure. If all of my walleye on that lure have been on the bottom, and he goes down the bottom, and then you lift up and he's there.
Boom.
But on as drop shotting, none of them are on the bottom. So you got to keep everything in mind. You got to balance it out.
Fishing is not. If you're hung up on one thing and one thing only, chances are you're not getting a lot of fish. That's plain and simple. That's simple as you can put it. You need to. It's like a golfer. If a golfer is using a 7-iron for everything, he's probably not a very good golfer. And fishing is no different.
Tiger Woods using a 7-iron, because if Tiger Woods was using 7-iron for everything, he'd kick our asses supremely still. Backwards.
Thinking about kicking asses, we got to get our asses out of here.
Okie dokie.
Time to go. We're holding all these good people up. They got chores to do. It's weekend time. So we're going to sign off. Have yourselves a great weekend. Stay safe. Get out and do stuff. I mean, social distancing aside, you know what we need to do. We've got protocols in place. Being on the water is probably a really good place for most of us to be if we can do it on a different scale than we've done it in the past. We've got to stay apart, but it doesn't mean you can't get out in the water by any means at all.
Take your family fishing or fish by yourself. There's nothing wrong with either one. Take your family or fish by yourself. Nothing wrong.
And we'll catch you next week. Friday for sure. Next Friday for sure with our special guest. And we'll then talk to you about what our future looks like, because the whole gang is going to be together on Monday at Pine Post Productions. And we're going to lay out the game plan for moving forward. And we'll hopefully be able to fill you in on what's coming up for us in the Fishing Canada show and the Fishing Canada brand and all that good stuff. All right?
Yeah.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Pete, take care.
Cause we're in for some good fishing, feeling easy, feeling free. Yes, we're in for some good fishing, Canada. Come on, leave your worries behind where they belong. Cause we're in for some good fishing, yeah, they just bite naturally. Yes, we're in for some good fishing, Canada. You know I'm in my prime when a fighter's on the line, taking all the strength I've got to reel him in. When I tell the boys back home about the one that got away, they'll be wishing they'd come with us.